I mean, what's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stone.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football, like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live here on a Monday morning reviewing all the Week 7 NFL action. Appreciate everybody live on YouTube joining us nice and early on a Monday.
Very early.
Head-to-head with our friends at Good Morning Football, as always.
Mm-hmm.
But we're ready. We got, as usual, Sam, a lot to talk about. A full slate of Week 7 action. Are you ready to go?
Full slate other than all those teams on the bye.
Forget the buys.
Okay.
We'll be back to a full slate. It's next week or 2 weeks from now. There'll be no buys. Is it next week?
How does that make any sense?
It's buy-free. We have some buy-free weeks in the middle of the season. It's a new schedule.
There's 6 teams on a bye this week and no teams on a bye in a couple of weeks?
Don't ask me. Ask AWS and the billion iterations of schedules. All right, man. Let's get right into it. Starting in you guys covered Thursday Night Football on Friday. If you're looking for a Jags Saints review, check out the Friday show of the PFF NFL podcast. But we're going to go New England Patriots 29, Buffalo Bills 25. Patriots get their second win of the season. Bills fall to 4-3. Crazy back and forth game. New England was in control for much of it. Tried to fumble it away in the fourth quarter. Kind of felt like, okay, the underdog, your story's over. Buffalo, you're going to hand the game back to the Bills here. Bills take the lead in the fourth quarter, but the Patriots and Mac Jones lead a fourth quarter comeback to take the lead with about 10 seconds left and get the win in New England.
Yeah, 12, I think. They had 1 second less than Kansas City
12 seconds,
when they showed it's possible.
I rounded down to 10.
Yeah. I was just curious, it's like, well, this is possible. It's happened to you, in fact.
For field goal, though, they were down 4.
Still, Josh Allen.
So what'd you make of this game?
Another one of those games that just makes no damn sense. Like, how did this happen? Buffalo was a better team than New England. New England is a bad team. And yet they went out there and for the first majority of the game, we're like, no, we're going to take the lead. We're going to execute well. Mac Jones, coming off the back of some of the worst games any quarterback has had, is like, no, I'm going to be efficient and good and not do anything bad.
It's not crazy in the sense, it's not like you've never seen Mac Jones in New England play like this before. It was just they hadn't clearly all season. Early in the year, they were far more competitive than they have been in recent weeks. And you just kind of never know. I mean, this is why I picked them against New Orleans a couple weeks ago, because I didn't think they'd be that incompetent. I didn't think they'd get outscored 82-3 across a 2-game period, right? This is a more reasonable New England team that is competitive on both sides of the ball. Mac Jones, look, he wasn't perfect either. He fumbled in the pocket and had some weird plays in there, but he still finishes 25-30 for 272. This was like rookie year Mac Jones, where he's completing passes. He's mostly accurate, and he throws the game winner to Mike Gesicki, as you mentioned, with 12 seconds left.
Now, does he count for National Tight Ends Day?
I don't know. I'm over National Tight Ends Day. I don't. Gesicki? I don't know. Yeah. Did they classify him as a tight end?
I assume
they were talking tax.
When they folded into all the numbers.
Yeah, good for him. That was. Pharaoh Brown went full Gronk today in this game on National Tight Ends Day. 2 catches for 51 yards, and he was rumbling through the defense. It felt like, this is Demario Douglas, as crazy as this sounds, 6th-round rookie who's lit up training camp for the New England Patriots, playing out of the slot. I mean, every time he's on the field looks like one of their best playmakers.
And he is.
And they used him early on. They were using him on jet sweeps. It felt like, hey, Demario Douglas is the key to New England's offense not looking inept.
I mean, yeah, he does look like one of their best playmakers and has all season long. And given their playmakers, he probably is one of their best playmakers. It's just earlier in the season, he wound himself up in the Bill Belichick doghouse for fumbling. They're better when he's on the field, clearly. Now, they had 166 out of 272 receiving yards were after the catch. Their receivers did work with the ball in their hands.
So Mac Jones finishes with a time to throw of under 2.3 seconds, lightning quick, and an average depth of target about 4.5.
Yeah.
So it was a quick hitting, short passing attack. But yeah, you're right. I mean, whether it's Pharaoh Brown or Demario Douglas, they did a lot of work after the catch. Ramondre Stevenson on that game-winning drive, a little swing to him for a big gain. But yeah, that's kind of how Mac Jones played a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I mean, this was what we knew New England were capable of, but it showed no signs that was going to happen recently. Josh Allen, start the game. So it's one of those, like, when you see games that go in a weird way, I'm always curious how it started, right? Like, what was the opening sort of sequence of drive? Did it go one way dramatically? So New England get their touchdown. Josh Allen comes back. And was it the first play of the game where he just completely misreads the coverage and tosses it to like a dropping cover 2 corner? And you're like, that's terrible. What are you doing? That's
it was,
like
Jabril Peppers. It was cover 3, actually. Yeah. Hit the curl flat. Hit the curl flat defender.
No, you're right.
Underneath.
I'm just looking at it now.
Sorry. I didn't mean it. I'm not trying to correct you.
You're correct. You're right.
Usually you correct your podcast partner more subtly.
No, it's important to get the correction on the record. Is important.
Cover 3.
I don't want to be factually incorrect. Right, you're right.
Yeah.
It's
not a flat defender. It's a curl flat.
Right.
Yeah.
Dropping zone defender underneath, just throws it right to him. But that's like those sort of rookie mistake plays where you're like, he just didn't really anticipate what that zone defender is capable of in the NFL. It's like, well, Allen should probably know that by now, and instead threw him the ball, and that kind of set the stage. It's like, now New England goes back and now they're up 10 or whatever, and the Bills were in a hole that it took them most of the game to dig their way out of. And honestly, they ended up taking the lead, but with a few minutes to go, it didn't look like this was likely for them to come back at all.
I'll go through the end of game sequence really quick. So the Patriots are up 2 scores, and Josh Allen hits Stephon Diggs for a touchdown. Beautiful play by Diggs. Allen makes a nice throw under pressure against the blitz. Diggs catches it, does a little pop-up slide. We call that a pop-up slide in baseball. Yeah. And then gets into the end zone.
Sam, before we get to the exact sequence, this was, since chronologically it's the first game we're doing here, this was the first of the games this weekend that had some very questionable officiating calls in it. I mean, look,
I want to talk about the football.
You don't like officiating, but it's going to be very difficult to avoid it this weekend. There was some horrendous officiating calls.
It's 7 a.m. I'm geared up for our 2.5 hours. I'm ready. I got my coffee and everything. What I'm not ready for is 2.5 hours of you talking about officiating and toe taps along the sideline, because I know what we're getting into.
You don't need 2.5 hours of it, but you're going to find it very difficult to get through the games today without mentioning officiating for several of them.
Do you want to highlight the official?
This was one of them. They had several plays that were massive high leverage calls that kept drives going, that kept Buffalo in this game, including the latest in an example of Josh Allen flops. They got him a roughing the passer call.
Flop was ridiculous.
Right.
Jalen Carter's was also ridiculous.
That was also ridiculous. But like a dude runs into Josh Allen, hits him in the chest, and Allen like goes to the ground. Flag.
Is the NBA cracking down on flopping now? Is that correct, or is that soccer? Like somebody's cracking down on it. Like the NFL.
Soccer did for a while.
If the NFL is cracking down on helmet to helmet and literal unsafe plays, they should probably crack down on this idiocy, which is flopping, which results in 15-yard penalties that change the game. They should probably crack down on that. Mm-hmm. Is that all you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is one of those games, the first one that we will talk about, where officiating played a pretty significant part of it.
Great. I won't go through all the sequence, but basically, New England's up 2 scores. Allen to Diggs for a touchdown to get within a score, and then New England has 4 minutes left. Whatever it is, they're up 5, I think it was at the time, and they have a chance to, run their 4-minute drill, run it out. Jordan Poyer with a peanut punch, which we see more and more. Was it last year or 2 years ago that really became more prevalent around the league? Darius Leonard, when he was Darius, had like 7 of these a couple years ago. Peanut punch on Kendrick Bourne. So Kendrick Bourne fumbles. Buffalo gets the ball back. They convert a 4th down, eventually get into the end zone, and it looks like, all right, Buffalo's going to survive. The better team is going to survive the onslaught from the underdog, but then the Patriots come back, as I mentioned, on their game-winning drive, swing past to Ramondre Stevenson for 30-plus yards and gets them into position. There's a penalty that put them at the goal line as well, right, for New England, and then they get the game winner to Gesicki.
Everybody was like, "It's no way Mac Jones is leading a game-winning drive," and then he did.
Well, he had been something like 1 for 11 or something in previous fourth-quarter comeback opportunities. Not necessarily, there's a wide reason for why those things happen. Week 1 against Philadelphia, they had an opportunity, and Mac Jones made some good throws that just didn't get caught. But the Patriots went from always seems to like something went wrong on every play. Remember last week against the Raiders, Mac Jones makes a great throw. Devontae Parker drops it, and then he gets sacked, right? Somebody was failing on every single play, but it wasn't just one person, and New England just didn't have that this week. Also had their best pass blocking performance of the week. I got to see if that is officially correct. Yeah, it is, by a pretty wide margin. This was by far the best run block, pass block operation, performance by the Patriots. It was their highest EPA per play as a team. Like, everything was better.
It's also
the
the closest to their starting 5 offensive linemen that they want to have over a season that you're going to get, right? Like, part of the problem with why their offensive line has been such a mess this season relative to previously is it's been pretty banged up. It wasn't great on paper anyway, and they've been forced to the bench, starting players that they don't really want to be starting. This has got to be as close to that starting 5 offensive linemen that they're going to get this season, at which point it looks better. Now, look, getting the ball out in 2.2 seconds is going to help that, but like that was a big part of this game. Is ball came out lightning quick. The receivers are getting yards after the catch, so Mac Jones is going to look better as long as he doesn't throw the ball to the wrong place, which he didn't. The pass protection is going to look better because they're not pass blocking very long, and Buffalo's pass rush isn't going to do anything because they don't have the time to get there, and get it done. So that affected a lot of things. The fact that they were able to get the ball out quickly, repetitively, for small gains that became bigger gains because receivers made work after the catch.
Now, Buffalo started to get banged up on the defensive side of the ball. Ed Oliver, we know some of the injuries that they've had there. Von Miller still being eased back in. How concerned are you for the Bills, right? I mean, they barely beat the Giants. I mean, they were 1 play away from losing to the Giants just last Sunday night. It's basically 3 straight weeks of underachieving for the Bills, right? They weren't all that competitive as a team against the Jags in London. It felt like, hey, maybe they were sleepwalking last week against the Giants. They'll be back. And they lose to New England. I think this is the first time in the post-Brady era the Patriots have beaten the Bills without 60-mile-an-hour winds. Is that correct? Is that their first non-60-mile-an-hour win against Buffalo? So, yeah, this is against the trend here. So Buffalo falls to 4-3, losing pace for that number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, I mean, falling way behind the other contenders. For them, like, it's not great, and they've shown a weird vulnerability this season in certain games and in a different way each time. I kind of get like the number 1 seed thing may be going the way, but it honestly doesn't really matter for them. Like, once they make the playoffs, they're capable of doing things, but it's like it's more a case of, does this actually mean anything, or are these just games that they don't want to be dropping along the way? Like, if these actually highlight vulnerabilities to this Buffalo team that can be exploited in the postseason, that's a bigger problem. But in terms of, does it actually matter for their season? I mean, were they going to get the number 1 seed anyway in a really tough AFC? If that goes, does it really matter as long as you still make the playoffs? All
right, New England, their second win. Buffalo falls to 4-3 and second place in the AFC East. Fall's all about back to school and the back to routine checklist. And the most important task on that list should be securing your family's financial future, starting with life insurance. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it quick, easy, and affordable to protect your family so you can get back to enjoying life. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, where else are we going to go here? Let's do this Browns game here. Cleveland Browns 39, Indianapolis Colts 38. The Browns move to 4-2. Colts fall to 3-4. One of the craziest games of the weekend. A mighty roar from the sound booth by Tyler. He's geared up. He's got his Browns gear, and he is ready to go. He is ready to roll with P.J. Walker for the rest of the season. And, P.J. Walker leads the fourth quarter comeback.
Yeah.
Didn't
PJ
he?
and the officials.
Oh, let's get into some officiating.
Now, you were trying to claim before we went live that the uncatchable pass was not that uncatchable.
I saw one view where it didn't look as bad.
I would put it to you that that uncatchable pass was incredibly uncatchable, even had you been the receiver in the back of the end zone. In fact, even had the receiver in the back of the end zone been Victor Wembanyama, I would say it was significantly uncatchable. It landed basically at the stand. It was wildly uncatchable, and yet the officials are just like, nah, whatever. It's pass interference.
It probably was.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
I do believe on those plays, though, where a guy is unable to jump, you do get a little skewed view sometimes. It always looks like those plays along the sideline.
They seem to have like forgotten the uncatchable portion of
They really have.
defensive pass interference this season. I
See
don't
if
know
I
if
can
that's
find this
like a
again.
deliberate, focus on officiating, whether they've like specifically said, hey, don't worry about the uncatchable thing, like penalize the illegal contact. But there have been some plays this year where the ball has been not even close to being catchable, and they've still thrown a flag and called it pass interference.
See, I don't think it's that crazy.
Yeah, no, it is, though.
Because you only saw it sail over his head when he was crumbling due to the contact.
No, I saw where the ball went, and I also saw where the end zone was, and I decided that
It's tough
there's no way
perspective
that's
because
catchable.
if is that Peoples-Jones? Yeah. If Peoples-Jones, who's 6'3", is standing up, it's an overthrow. But he might be able to get fingertips to the ball if he jumps straight up. I'm just saying.
Stop it.
It's kind of a weak call, though. Weak call. So back-to-back penalties. I don't even know where to start in this game. There was a lot of crazy plays. From just a scoring perspective, Jerome Ford kicks it off with a 69-yard touchdown run, big gap, takes it to the house. The second touchdown, Gardner Minshew hits Josh Downs for a 59-yarder. It was a blown coverage by Cleveland.
So, Myles Garrett, who had one of the most insane games ever, also jumped offside twice, and on both plays, it was like a massive bust by the Browns defense.
Yeah.
Like this one was the first
And he
one that
stopped
was worse.
playing.
Everybody stopped playing.
Yeah.
It's like, he jumped. So everyone just stopped playing, and the Colts were like, but this is a free play, thanks, and just hit Josh Downs' touchdown. Like
That's why Gardner Minshew's stat line is nuts.
But for all the good that Myles Garrett did, like those two jumping offside penalties were massive problems for the Browns.
Even though last week wasn't necessarily a jumping offsides penalty, this the Downs play for 59 yards was reminiscent of the play that we broke down on the Explain the Grade, where Christian McCaffrey was running wide open for a potential 55-yarder. And I just want to make the point that sometimes on a week-to-week basis, if the QB misses the throw, it feels like good defense. If he hits the open throw, it feels like bad defense. And there were some of those plays for the Browns. I don't think the Browns' defense actually played that poorly. It was just the plays that they had, like Michael Pittman's 75-yarder. You have sometimes it's just two players, right? It's like the corner misses a tackle, the safety's out of position, and it's a 75-yarder. It's not horrible team defense by every single player. But that was a big play as well. 75-yarder from Michael Pittman when the Browns are up 2 in the fourth quarter. You have the Colts leading 21-17 just a little bit before the half and trying to run the clock out and maybe punt and just get into the half with a lead, and instead Myles Garrett with a strip sack in the end zone that leads to a touchdown. So as I mentioned, like Gardner Minshew's stat line looks ridiculous because he had 15 completions for 305 yards. So he was 15 of 23 for 305. That's 13.3 yards per attempt, in part because you have those coverage busts or Michael Pittman running through the defense for 75. But Minshew also, for the second straight week, was it 2 weeks ago against the Jags? I mean, he just put the ball in harm's way a ton, including a bunch of fumbles.
Yeah, it was a weird game by Minshew. And they were using, like, the touchdown run, his first one, that's like an Anthony Richardson play that you assume is no longer in the playbook. And they're like, no, let's run it with Minshew. Well, what's the worst that could happen? And it's like, it's an actual option in the true sense of pass and run, right? Like it's a sort of read option look or fake run up the middle, and then Minshew runs out to the side, keeps the ball, runs out to the side. There's a route combination going. Like there's a pass option there. Everybody's looking for the ball, and then he just like jukes Grant Delpit, was it, out of his shoes and starts running it, and he's still got like 15, 20 yards to go, and takes it in. It's like this is a play that Minshew's not supposed to be running anymore, let alone actually having success with it.
Someone in the chat says those plays are on Garrett. Well, yeah, I mean, we're going, then they should show up in his PFF grade. Well, offsides will show up in his PFF grade. We're not going to give. I mean, that
doesn't get charged for a touchdown because everybody else stopped playing.
That's part of the. I mean, the guy that we always compare Myles Garrett to, T.J. Watt, also had an extremely costly offside penalty yesterday that prolonged a Rams play. But it's just, again, I think we're not getting into explaining the grade stuff. It's just one play, right? You give a downgrade for the offside thing. It's not Myles Garrett's fault necessarily that coverage stopped playing or that it was a 75-yarder or whatever it may have been on those plays. You don't get deducted more because, the result of the play. It's just you get a downgrade for jumping off sides.
Yeah, I will say Garrett does tend to jump offside quite a lot.
Yeah.
But
that's the balance with.
But he was ridiculous in this game, like absolutely absurd. He had the kind of, like we've had this argument for years, the difference between T.J. Watt and Myles Garrett. And generally speaking, the difference is Myles Garrett wins more on a down-to-down basis, but T.J. Watt's plays are more impactful, right? The strip sacks, the interceptions like he had yesterday. And Garrett doesn't tend to have those types of games. And, some of that is the fact that he just doesn't have the help around him and the ball is out quick and blah, blah, blah. But whatever. Like, he doesn't tend to have them. But he had one yesterday. Like, he absolutely took over that game. He had several plays that completely changed the complexion of the game, including jumping clean over the line and blocking a kick. Like, he had a T.J. Watt type of game where all of his big plays were massively impactful, including the mistakes, like the offside ones.
He wrecked poor Blake Freeland. I always refer to him as poor Blake Freeland.
Certainly when you're blocking Myles Garrett.
Because Freeland's just not ready to pass block in the NFL, as we keep saying, and he completely whiffed on him. Garrett absolutely had those big plays. I mean, the one other point I just want to make here, again, I don't think play for play. This is what's weird about football, Sam. I don't think play for play, the Browns' defense was way worse than last week against the 49ers. But think about all the different conditions. When the Browns made a mistake, the Colts hit the throw, or they made the catch, or it was just one or two players made a mistake on a play, and that leads to a huge gain. Or sometimes you're just in a dome and not in the rain, and that helps you make the throw. I think sometimes when you watch film and you're not looking to just justify the result, right? You don't just say, well, this team shut down the 49ers, therefore it must have been the best defense. You watch film, sometimes you see opportunities, sometimes you see a little bit of luck, sometimes you see those things, and oftentimes they get exposed. And I thought in a few plays, some of the plays that the Browns got lucky on last week, they got less lucky on this week. Now, at the end of the day, Browns end up winning the game for various reasons. Let's go to their side of the ball offensively. Deshaun Watson last 5 dropbacks, throws a bad pick on the run, gets hit pretty hard. I mean, he looked really hurt. He gets tested for concussion, passes concussion protocol, we find out later.
Yeah, everybody assumed that he went out of the game because the shoulder got re-injured, right? He got hit hard, went out. They didn't rush him back, but he's back. It was a shoulder injury. Shoulder injuries re-aggravated. But apparently, yeah, he was being tested for concussion, passed the test, and still didn't come back into the game.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird, in addition to the weird he's been medically cleared but not playing for a while.
I mean, I'm assuming he doesn't feel great with his shoulder. I'm assuming that's a big part of it. P.J. Walker, once again, did not play great, but the cover 2 shot that he hit on the comeback attempt, under pressure, hits an absolute laser to Elijah Moore. I mean, P.J. Walker remains an enigma on a play-by-play basis, trying to figure out what he's going to do, but he also pulls out. Remember last year he had, was it the Hail Mary? But it was more like just a bomb behind the defense. I mean, he's got some of the best one-off throws we've seen in the NFL the last couple of years. P.J. Walker with a great cover 2 shot. Tyler wants him to be the starter for the rest of the season. Have P.J. Walker running the show here for the Browns.
It's funny because, you know, a game like yesterday, you get some of the Browns accounts on Twitter, and they're like, here's how quickly they can get out from the Deshaun Watson contract. You're like, oh, God. Like, that's maybe the worst single move in NFL history if they have to get away from it at any point. Like, that's just an absolute and total catastrophe.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's at that level yet. But it's a combination of when he's been on the field, Watson, it hasn't been good. And now you've got this, shoulder injury where he can't get on the field. I have to look it up. I don't think I've ever seen a game like this, 39-38, where the quarterback grades are so poor. Because Minshew's got 5 turnover-worthy plays. And like I said, hitting like a 15-yard dig to Michael Pittman is fine. But that usually ends up as a 15 to 20-yard gain, not a 75-yarder, right? Hitting a wide-open Josh Downs for 58 yards. Those are inflating the stats for Minshew. And again, Walker on the other side, one big-time throw, a couple turnover-worthy plays. Don't see this very often.
No. Really nice interception by Denzel Ward, though. Like, that was one that, okay, it was risky by Minshew, but most of the time, minimum, that's just broken up. But Ward kind of takes it off the receiver and ends up picking it off.
Yeah. Really nice play there. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, in a game like this, obviously the Browns scored a defensive touchdown as well. It's not all offensive points, but the defense has made a lot of good plays in this. Rodney Thomas with a nice interception. Julian Blackman played well for the Colts, the safeties. So, yeah, it was a crazy back-and-forth game. And then if you want to go back, it was 2 penalties that put the Browns into scoring position for the game-winning touchdown, which, again, was that on 4th down? Kareem Hunt?
The touchdown?
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head.
The Browns kept trying to score through the air, and then they give it to Hunt, and he barely gets across the goal line for the touchdown to put them up.
It was on 4th down.
On 4th down. So it all came down to that last play. I mean, this was such a back-and-forth game, I had to remind myself who won, because there was times where I was like, that's it, the Colts have won. They made the final play. Or that's it. The Browns made the last play. They're going to win. It was such a great back-and-forth game.
Yeah, so the first penalty was on 3rd and 4. And then the second one was after that. And so the first one was – the second one was interesting because it was clearly uncatchable, and the officials have just decided they don't care about that this year. The first one was interesting because it was illegal contact, right? It didn't – slow the receiver down at all because he kind of missed and fell over, and it's like, all right.
That was a pretty clear.
Well, it was, but it didn't actually do anything. Like, it was definitely illegal contact, and it was definitely, a bad play by the defense. On the other hand, he missed the illegal contact and fell face first in the turf. It's like he didn't actually impede him anywhere. He failed at what he was trying to do. I don't have a problem with them calling it. It's just an interesting, generally speaking, when you call those defensive penalties, it's because it significantly impeded the receiver. This one barely touched the receiver because he did such a bad job at trying to foul, and yet gets called anyway.
I want to stand with Angry Drunken German in the chat as well, who says the fact this game was bleeding over into the Chiefs-Chargers was infuriating. I don't understand. I have Sunday tickets, Sam.
Yeah.
I don't understand why I can't watch full-screen football games of every game. I have access to every game. But because CBS does it's their national game, Chiefs-Chargers, they want to show the end of Browns-Colts.
So
because it went the other way, right? They wouldn't let people see the end of a game last week, or one of the channels wouldn't let somebody see the end of the game last week. It's like, but if you have Sunday ticket and you pay for every game, you should never see a split screen.
Here's my take on that. I don't have a problem with the split screen, but I think it needs to be consistent. It needs to be the game you're watching is a larger screen.
Yeah. You're not red zone. You're not going back and forth between audio.
Yeah, and it needs to stick with the audio of the game you're watching, right?
Right.
So I don't have a problem with picture-in-picture, and, down in the bottom left-hand corner or whatever, you see the game that's still dragging ass and hasn't finished yet, but don't ever go to that audio and keep it the same freaking size. Stop bouncing between various different, picture sizes and aspect ratios, because that's annoying and confusing.
Yeah, well, especially because I think you have to understand. I don't know.
But I don't have a problem keeping it on the screen and being like, this thing's actually still going on, and that's relevant to some people, so let's keep going.
I understand I'm in the minority. The Sunday ticket users are in the minority, right? But you now have this new multi-view on YouTube. Like, somebody's watching that game on multi-view already, and then they're getting this small picture-in-picture. Like, the whole thing is it's a work in progress.
Yeah, but I don't, again, I don't have an issue with there being the picture-in-picture thing. I just think the way they're doing it at the moment is awful.
All right, Cleveland Browns moving to 4-2, tied with the Steelers, right? Steelers 4-2 now? Yeah, they don't make sense.
Somehow.
The AFC North, very confusing, as always. All right, New York Giants 14, Washington Commanders 7. Fun game, Sam. It was not.
It was
No,
fun.
it was. There was some fun stuff in here. Tyrod Taylor got the start again. We mentioned this could be a sack fest. We also prefaced it by if Daniel Jones played. But yeah, Tyrod Taylor got sacked 4 times. Sam Howell got sacked 6 times.
It's because you wouldn't let me call it a sack-off.
No, you shouldn't. I mean, it was.
That's what it was.
It certainly was this week. The Saquon Barkley Giants are far more competitive, as we've seen.
The Tyrod Taylor Giants.
Taylor. Oh, maybe it's the Tyrod Taylor Giants.
The sacks were so obvious that they were calling them. Like the way Tony Romo was, everyone thought Romo was great because you spent the first 6 months of his career calling plays before they happened. That the announcers are doing that for sacks in this game. They're like, well, we told you there was going to be a lot of sacks. Watch this third down. It's like Sam Howell drops back, just sack. They're like, yeah, told you. That's how obvious the sacks were in this game. They were literally doing a Tony Romo before, and it's sack coming here, watch it.
I don't think this one was as egregious as last week as far as blaming Sam Howell for the sacks, but yeah,
but there were some in there.
It was a little, it was a throwback for me, I thought, to last year, where the Giants, remember they held on to win a bunch of these games, and against the Packers, I think in London, and there was a couple other games. They made goal line stands. I think maybe against Tennessee in Week 1. They made these goal line stands, and they're not just goal line stands. It's Wink Martindale goal line stands. When the Giants are going to have some aggressive blitzes down the stretch here. But that's what it was, right? Sam Howell has, they have extra rushers, and on third down, so the Commanders are down 7, trying to lead the comeback. Third down, Sam Howell spins away from the pressure, hits Jahan Dotson. Or was that on 4th? That was on 4th down or 3rd down? Yeah, wait. Hits Jahan Dotson and drops. I think that was on 4th down to end the game. But you just have the Giants sending extra rushers, knowing you got to hit somebody quick, you got to get it to somebody, and it puts a lot of pressure on the offense. Those are the types of game clinchers that the Giants had last year, and we got to see that this week against Washington.
I mean, I think it is worth pointing out the difference that Tyrod Taylor has made to this offense. As much as Tyrod Taylor might not be great, he has changed things. Like him taking deep shots to Jalen Hyatt is different. They've been Giants fans have been calling for this all season long, and apparently the only person in the building that thinks there's merit in just going, hey, why not let's lob the ball up in the direction of the really fast guy and see what happens. Maybe there's a good play out here. I mean, he's hit multiple deep shots to Jalen Hyatt. He had a third one that was in his hands, and the DB broke it up in the end zone. That changes the offense, even with a bad offensive line. Our friend Eric Edholm tweeted after they scored, the Giants just scored their first touchdown in a month, first half touchdown, and first touchdown at home. Tyrod Taylor now has as many passing touchdowns as Daniel Jones this season. okay, you're kind of stuck with Daniel Jones, but there's a significant chance that Tyrod Taylor is actually a better quarterback for the current offense.
Oh, man. I mean,
he's looking a lot more like the Buffalo Bills version of Tyrod Taylor than the subsequent one, the guy that's been bouncing around the league as a backup / journeyman / hey, remember when he was good for the Bills and isn't anymore? Like, he looks more like that guy than he does the second version.
Okay. I mean, Tyrod's played pretty well the last couple weeks.
Yeah, and his biggest flaw has been taking some silly sacks, which
the Giants have scored. Giants have scored 23 points the last 2 weeks.
Right.
I mean, the difference is their defense is playing way better. That's real difference.
That's not the difference at all, because we've just established that he has as many touchdowns as Daniel Jones in a fraction of the time.
That's fine.
So that's
Daniel
better.
Jones also had a second half. He had a second half of a game against the Cardinals where they scored more points than Tyrod's last 2 games as starter for the Giants. Let's not
against the Cardinals.
Let's not.
That's what we're going for here.
People tune in here at 7 a.m. on a Monday to get some real, in-depth analysis. Sam, not the guy that's led the team to 11.5 points the last 2 weeks, is the future here for the Giants. Like,
he's the future.
You said he's the future. Lock him up. Tyrod. I know you didn't say that.
No.
But Daniel Jones isn't playing well and everything. The offense is ugly, and Tyrod's playing a little bit better these last couple of weeks. But let's not get crazy here. The offense still has plenty of issues. I agree with unlocking Jalen Hyatt and at least chucking it, right? It did feel like Daniel Jones was under so much pressure you don't have time to get it out there. But sometimes you do. Just hit the top of your drop, get it out there, let Jalen Hyatt make a play. He had 2 catches for 75
Well, this
yards.
was like the Andy Dalton game for Carolina. It's like sometimes you need another guy in there just to see how bad the situation actually is. Like, I think what Tyrod Taylor has shown is that as bad as the situation is in New York, it's not as bad as Daniel Jones was making it look. And actually, because of that, Tyrod Taylor might actually be a better quarterback for this offense at the moment. I'm not sure what you thought I said, but that's what I said.
Better for the offense for the moment. I know. I took some liberties with what you said. I did a little bit.
Yeah.
I was also just trying to ground you a little bit that the narrative changes. If the Giants defense was playing as poorly as they were earlier in the year and the Giants lose, 24-14, it's just like, oh, same old Giants. They scored 14 points. Or if the Giants defense got lit up by the Bills last week, as on paper it looked like they could, and they lose 31-9 because they scored 9 points last week instead of 14-9, it might not feel as good. You know what I mean?
It doesn't have to feel as good, but I think it's visible that he's outperforming Jones at the moment.
Yeah, look, I will agree. He is. Tyrod hitting some big-time throws, getting the ball down the field much better, and you just see a better group of playmakers, right? Even just getting Darren Waller unlocked, getting Jalen Hyatt on a couple deep balls, Saquon Barkley with a really nice 32-yard touchdown through the air where Tyrod extends the play a little bit, gets him the ball in space. So I'll agree. Yeah, obviously Tyrod Taylor's playing better than Daniel Jones had played over these last couple weeks, but Giants defense has been far better. I mentioned that they sacked Sam Howell 6 times. Dexter Lawrence was unblockable on several of those. I tried to go through it, try to break down the sacks again, just to see. This one was far more on the offensive line on those particular plays. Dexter Lawrence getting quick pressure, missing stunts. But anytime you see an unblocked rusher, and you get that a lot with the Giants, a lot of times it's on the QB, right? Either setting the protection so that the guy's not unblocked, or the unblocked guy is the quarterback's responsibility, right? And it's like, if this guy comes, you're throwing behind him, there's a hot route. And didn't always have a hot route and everything. It was a bit of a mess. But the Commanders' offensive line did not do a great job picking up stunts, blocking Dexter Lawrence. They didn't have answers for unblocked defenders a whole lot. And even after all that said, Giants turn it over in Washington territory, and the Commanders drove from their own 8 all the way to the Giants' 7. I think they had first and goal from the 7, and they're unable to tie the game. As I mentioned, Jahan Dotson drops it. So narrative-wise, the Giants' defense played much better. Tyrod's playing a little bit better. Just another weird 7.
What did you make at the very end of this game? So right after that play, Jahan Dotson drops the ball, 4th and 5, down by the 7, a minute left, right? So now the Giants get the ball with 56 seconds left on the clock.
I probably started watching another game.
Okay, so they get the ball with 56 seconds on the clock. At that point, Washington had 2 timeouts. So if you start doing the math in terms of clock, they don't have the time to chew it all up, right? You either need a first down or you need to do a few of those plays that eat out some seconds, because you're not going to be able to just take a knee. They're going to have to get the ball back. Instead, they do decide to take knees. And not even those knees where you're like running back and trying to choose some time, just taking some knees, which means they're going to be giving the ball back to Washington with like 16 seconds left on the clock. 16 seconds was what they needed to burn in order to not give the ball back to Washington with time on the clock. And the game ends up being ended because on one of those knees, somehow Daron Payne gets hurt, and that's a 10-second runoff and game done, right?
Yeah.
But effectively, rather than run plays and try and eat 16 seconds.
Because the last knee took place with 51 seconds left.
Right. So rather than like run plays and try and get rid of 16 seconds and or pick up a first down, the Giants were like, no, we'll take a knee and we'll gamble essentially that they won't be able to score. Yes. That feels. I mean, I understand that when you run plays, bad things can happen. Like, it's not a shot to nothing, right? You can always fumble the ball or make a mistake of any other kind that can cost you time, points, whatever. But it feels like if you don't burn 16 seconds, they're going to get the ball back outside of a weird situation like this. I was kind of surprised they elected to just take knees and risk that.
Well, they offset it by having Mark Lewinsky just take Daron Payne down, twist him up, so he got hurt.
Yeah.
That's like, hey, guys,
that's part of the play call?
We got to run the clock. If you injure one of the commanders, they'll get a 10-second runoff. We'll win the game.
So there's the...
No, they were legit. Like, Daron Payne was doing one of those, it's the kneel, I'm going to try to blow it up, and Greg Schiano it. And then Glowinski was like, they actually blocked on the kneel as I'm watching it.
Right.
And then he took him down.
But I was very surprised that they decided to kneel rather than actually try and run clock and or pick up a first down, because the game wasn't over.
Yeah, that is a little surprising. But it did work out because they injured Daron Payne. So they got it. All right, man. We've got Commanders up and down season. They're 3-4. Giants moved to 2-5. The 1-5 teams had a great week.
Good for them.
Maybe they're pretenders. But who are the pretenders? Who are the contenders? We're more than halfway through the NFL season, almost. That's what it tells me, though. That's what it tells me.
Yeah.
But DraftKings Sportsbook still pumping out unbeatable offers every single game. New customers can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Bet on anything, $5. DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every single game this October. You can get in on the football action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the app now and use code PFF. So you can go check out Monday Night Football tonight. You got Niners. You got the Vikings. You can go do it right now. If you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with the code PFF. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ont. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football. Terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms and responsible gaming resources. All right, let's go to Baltimore Ravens 38, Detroit Lions 6. The game I think I was looking forward to the most this week, and the Ravens just dominate from start to finish. 5-2 Ravens. Lions fall to 5-2. As soon as we start declaring the Lions as Super Bowl competitors, the Ravens, man, really just took it to them and dominated. Lamar Jackson finishes 21 of 27 for 357, over 13 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, and just a dominant game here for the Ravens.
Yeah, it was. Both sides of the ball as well. Like they were up 28-0 at the half, something like that. And then
Like well before the half.
yeah,
but
like then coming out of halftime,
early second.
So obviously, when you're 28-0 up, neither side of the ball has gone well for the team that's got nothing, right? But then the Lions come out of the half and they lead a drive, at the start of the second half, and then don't get in. Like it was 4th down, right? They took a shot into the end zone, didn't come up with it. So there was sort of signs that maybe the offense can crawl its way back into this, but then it wouldn't have mattered anyway because the defense still didn't stop Baltimore. So just a depressing game from the Lions' point of view because neither side, both sides of the ball, were completely outclassed.
So this was one of those games. Baltimore's offense, remember a couple of weeks ago, it was one of those, hey, Lamar's playing really well, but everybody's dropping the ball. This was maybe the first game where you saw everybody. The on-paper group of receivers, Odell Beckham, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman. We know what Mark Andrews can do. We know how Lamar...
Certainly on National Tight Ends Day.
Yes, of course. Mark Andrews, 2 touchdowns on National Tight Ends Day.
That's what I'm saying.
Were they scheming those up? Like they were scheming up Travis Kelce on the little screen pass deal?
I mean, is it a coincidence that it was a huge tight end day on National Tight End Day?
No, it was not.
See?
It was by design. As I was saying, the Ravens had everything working. And, so it was one of those games. It was the opposite of when we described the offense where something goes wrong on every play. The Ravens had the opposite, right? They had some well-schemed plays on offense. They had plays that worked within structure. They have Lamar Jackson. They had an 80-yarder to Gus Edwards where Lamar's, rolling out. He sucks in the linebackers and just drops it over their head for an 80-yarder to Gus Edwards. Everything was working. You have Lamar, his first touchdown was on a keeper, which was beautiful.
On 4th and 1.
Yeah.
So
well designed.
An interesting call, right out of the gate. Now, up until that point, that drive had gone incredibly well. Like Jackson was dropping dimes. He basically took non-Lamar Jackson plays were 4 yards on that drive up until that point. But 4th and 1 from the 7-yard line, it would have been very easy to just kick the field goal. And instead, they're like, no, let's keep it rolling. They put the touchdown on the board. The Lions fumbled the ball away in the next. So it could have started very differently, but the Ravens had enough guts to go for it on that 4th and 1 and score a touchdown instead.
And then their second touchdown is Lamar on a scramble drill, making a great pass in the back of the end zone. He was, and just before that, you have a 3rd and 2 where he just picks up 3 yards on a scramble, right? The Ravens, this was a game of, when the scoreboard's that, when it's that dominant from a scoreboard perspective, it's not just every play worked. It's that the Ravens found a way to make plays work in different ways, right? When the Lions covered it well, there's a scramble drill. Or when they didn't cover it well, Lamar's hitting the throw. When it was just one-on-one, Zay Flowers runs a great route for a deep out route. I mean, the Ravens had answers for everything.
This was like MVP Lamar Jackson. I mean,
Certainly.
he was playing incredibly. He had some absolutely wild extending of plays, in the pocket as well. Not just sort of when you hear a guy like Lamar Jackson and extending the play, you tend to think of crazy Russell Wilson-esque, let's just run around behind the line of scrimmage, let's wait until there's a gap. But he was doing some wild extending of the plays within the pocket of just sort of bouncing around, movements more extreme than, Tom Brady, Dan Marino type movements within the pocket, but staying in there, right, and looking for the pass. That second touchdown, the one to Aguilar, the amount of time he was in the pocket for before eventually breaking it into space and then waiting until Aguilar uncovered was just insane. So, the Lions, we've said previously, the sort of one area of potential weakness is their pass rush is basically Aiden Hutchinson and very little else. It was kind of like that in this game as well. Even Hutchinson didn't have that much of an impact, but also Lamar just didn't care. There were times where they were getting a bit of pressure and he was just doing this Aaron Rodgers-esque resetting of lineman leverage and, just moving around within the pocket and staying out of reach of the pass rush and then ending it with either a run or a touchdown or just absolutely insane level stuff from Lamar.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think Hutchinson's going to have one of those games with a pretty decent pressure number, but not necessarily high impact plays, right? Because a pressure, much like sacks, can be late in the down, can be after 5 seconds. They're not all after wins or dominant wins. Those are the games that are tough to predict. I mean, credit the Ravens' offensive line overall played outstanding from a pass pro standpoint, but it's tough to predict when the Lions, when it really is just going to be Aiden Hutchinson and friends, or if he doesn't have his best game. Like on that 3rd and 2 I was talking about, that was Hutchinson did have a nice win and just didn't finish it. Lamar breaks out, picks up 3 yards on 3rd and 2 right before the scramble drill touchdown. So everything from a Lions perspective, everything went wrong. From a Baltimore perspective, I always use the word answers. Does this team have answers? And they had answers to everything, right? We have good players. We have good pass catchers. We have a quarterback who's throwing the ball accurately and on time. And then when those guys aren't open, he's also just going to make a play and create plays where he's open, like Aguilar in the back of the end zone. So I thought it was an outstanding, complete game by the Ravens. We haven't even talked about their defense because we've talked up this Lions offense. And I know there was times last year, they got shut out in New England last year. Like there was a few times where Detroit's offense has laid an egg, but Baltimore has the best scoring defense, so far this season. And, Detroit didn't give Detroit many options.
The Lions
or on the ground.
The Lions didn't pick up a first down until about 7.5 minutes left in the second quarter when they were already down 28-0.
Yeah.
Like that was the first down they picked up was 7:42 in the second quarter, having already been stomped down 4 scores.
Yeah. Ravens offense, man, set the tone, and then the defense just kind of fed off it. I was really impressed. Impressed by Baltimore.
Yeah.
Across the board.
I mean, that was Lamar playing at this level is very, very difficult to do anything against. And I think it's significant that, we were saying for a while, Lamar's playing amazingly well. The receivers are kind of letting them down. The offense isn't really what we expected it to be. And a big part of that was they didn't have the group of receivers we thought they were going to have before the season. Well, now everybody they want is pretty much out there, and there's enough there to make plays. I mean, their top 3 target guys in this game were Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, and OBJ. That's basically what it's supposed to look like, right?
Yeah.
And then Rashad Bateman was in there making a couple of plays. Like, they still have other guys popping up with the occasional play, and Lamar's just playing out of his mind right now. The offensive line was good. Like, everything for Baltimore was good.
Yeah, it was really impressive, man. Start to finish. The other thing I just wanted to highlight, when the Ravens are good, and you mentioned MVP caliber Lamar Jackson, similar to what we say about the Shanahan offenses, when they're cooking, when they're doing well, poor linebackers. They put the linebackers in a bind because a linebacker facing Lamar Jackson in the Ravens has to take on, downhill running attack. They've got a little bit more of a horizontal running attack now, the new system. So they're getting their playmakers into space a little bit more. Then you have to deal with play action. You got to deal with misdirection and all these different things. Rookie linebacker Jack Campbell had his struggles. Alex Anzalone, who'd been having a fantastic season. Like the Ravens just did a lot to move linebackers, to move those second-level defenders. That creates those open throws, creates space. And so the Ravens offense is clicking and also putting those second-level defenders in a bind. That is very 2019-ish when it comes to the Ravens. So just wanted to point that out. Poor Jack Campbell as a rookie. Make him look wrong quite a bit. The Ravens did a nice job of that in this game.
Amazing game by Ronnie Stanley. I mean, the offensive line generally was really good, but Ronnie Stanley was fantastic.
Did you catch his block on the touchdown?
He had a Michael Oher block of driving a guy out of the end zone off the field. He also, I think it was another touchdown, but they had him on the other side of the line. They had him at like either right tackle or like tight end as the extra guy on that side for a sort of pin pull type of play where he cracks down and absolutely like broke open that side of the line as well. He just, normally you think of Ronnie Stanley as amazing pass blocker, the end, but he had a great game run blocking as well.
Yeah, he absolutely did. So shout out to Ronnie Stanley, and the chat wanted to shout out Tyler Linderbaum, the playmaking center, also played solid as well, playing pretty well for the Ravens. Let's go Atlanta Falcons 16, Tampa Bay Bucks 13. Falcons move into first place in the NFC South at 4-3. Bucks fall to 3-3 after the Saints fell to 3-3 on Thursday night. Of course, the Panthers are winless, so the Falcons are sitting there atop the NFC South. The fantasy community is very upset with Arthur Smith and the Atlanta Falcons because Bijan Robinson had merely one carry and was reportedly feeling ill.
Not feeling well.
Feeling well. And the fantasy folks are quite upset.
It wasn't clarified whether what was making him feel ill was Arthur Smith's deployment of his receiving resources. You know, maybe he was just personally affronted by the use of Kyle Pitts and Drake London, and that was making him feel sick.
I don't know what it was. But Tyler Algier pretty much handled the majority of the workload. You got to see Cordero Patterson again at running back.
Still a baller.
Yeah. And look, I know the Falcons only ended up scoring 16 points. Part of that was Desmond Ridder, didn't get to the end zone in time before he fumbled. We'll talk about that play
first
in a minute. But the Falcons' offense still looked pretty solid. They created a bunch of big plays in the pass game despite not having Bijan in there.
This apparently was the first time this century that a team or a quarterback has won a game whilst fumbling in the red zone or turning the ball over in the red zone 3 times.
Jeez. That was 3?
Yeah.
He fumbled a snap. He fumbled the ball right at the goal line. There was another fumble in there? What was the other one?
Yeah, I think so. I think he had 3 fumbles, right?
I love it. I love it when you get these never happened before stats. There was some crazy sequences in this game as well. So the Ridder gets in the end zone on a keeper at first. I tagged you on a tweet. I said, Sam's been calling for this, man. Been calling for some Desmond Ridder keepers, and he scores on a keeper in the red zone. But yeah, they got in there a couple times and
then he did it again. Only not so much.
So on that play, the Falcons are up 3 at the time, and Ridder keeps it.
Mm-hmm.
It was another one. Not that people care about, but I'm watching the million games, and I see him run in. I'm like, oh, Falcons score to go up 2 scores.
Yeah.
And then you come back, and they're going through the replay, and it's like, I don't think he got in, because Antoine Winfield tracks him down, knocks it out right at the half-yard line to save the touchdown. Incredible play by Antoine Winfield, which almost saved the game for the Bucs.
Yeah, it turned a 2-score lead into just a 3-point lead with the ball going the other way. This game had 2 plays in it where the magical goal line thing was a factor.
Yes.
People hate this idea of you fumble over the goal line, it's a touchback, blah, blah, blah. So that was one of them. The inches involved between Desmond Ridder scoring a touchdown, going up 2 scores, and Antoine Winfield knocks the ball out. It's actually a touchback. Tampa Bay get the ball. But then the other one was this insane Drake London play where he catches the ball and then sort of dives and gets hit and is reaching out with the ball whilst heading towards the earth head first.
Yeah, he's
and
going
spinning
straight down.
Right.
So
he's reaching out as his head is coming down towards the turf as the rest of his body is collapsing down on top of him. And the difference was like an inch between on this play. So they're replaying this, and the possible outcomes of this play are he's fumbled out of bounds and he gets the ball at the 2-inch line. He has fumbled over the goal line and it's a touchback, or he broke the plane of the goal line whilst falling towards the ground head first, and it's a touchdown. So they're sitting there at the replay, and the 3 possible outcomes are setting you up at the 1, touchdown, or turnover. And honestly, I genuinely think they're looking at this and they're like, what is the least egregious outcome we can give for this replay? Because honestly, it could be any of them. I would have supported a call of touchdown on that play, given the way the replay showed it.
So I think at the end of the day, he'd certainly.
And the thing, by the way, that sealed it, the thing that they said, oh, this is why it was, is because his finger, as he's falling towards the ground, this hand swipes outwards, just trying to keep balance, and apparently grazed the white turf outside, like the white line out. And they're like,
Oh, that's what made it?
yeah, he's out at the 1.
Because there was definitely a replay. If you're not watching the hand, you see the ball barely gets over the goal line
Right.
after it falls out of his hand. So you would say, okay, that's a touchback.
But it doesn't, it doesn't really
he was
fall
touching
out of
out
his
of bounds.
hand. He's still got hold of it. Anyway, the reason they were like, he's down at the 1 is because a finger like grazed the chalk out, off here somewhere while you're concentrating on this hand with the ball trying to break the plane.
Was that the famous ball don't lie?
No, that was
because the next play, Desmond Ridder dropped the snap, and that was
right.
the
I guess
turnover.
that one was Sunday Night Football. We got one.
No, I know Sunday Night Football was a legitimate one with the
Right.
face mask, but the next play, Ridder drops the snap, and that was a crazy exchange. The entire third quarter, the Bucs fumbled, Falcons get it. They have the Drake London play you just described, which put him at the inch line, and then Desmond Ridder drops the snap, and they turn it over again. And that was well before Antoine Winfield forces the fumble on the goal line. And even after all that, Chris Godwin makes a big play. So the Bucs are down 3, and Chris Godwin makes a big play to get into field goal range. And the Bucs look like they're set up for either a game-winning touchdown or a game-tying field goal. And then with 3:46 left, Baker Mayfield throws an interception. It was a really weird play. I don't think Baker's at fault here on this, that he's throwing a timing out route to the tight end. It's one of those scissors concepts. You got a post by the outside receiver. You have an out or a corner from the tight end, and Cade Otton gets like the timing. This is one of those like install in training camp. You have to get the timing so that the receiver and the tight end are crossing at the exact right time. Well, Godwin, for whatever reason, the timing's off. Otton's route gets stopped. Baker's throwing the ball on time for an out. It looks like it's way wide, and a beautiful interception to seal the deal pretty much for the Falcons. And that was it. Mm-hmm. This was a crazy back and forth game. I mentioned, Ridder. That was when they were down, right? Yeah. Well, that was when it was 13-10. Even to get in to the lead, for the Falcons to get into the lead. Big play to Kyle Pitts to get into field goal range. They had a big play to Tyler Algier where number 45 on the Bucs decided to vacate his coverage and leave Algier wide open for the 45-yarder.
Yeah.
There were a few big pass plays in this game by the Falcons. Ridder threw the ball pretty well overall when he wasn't fumbling it.
He wasn't fumbling it. Kyle Pitts made some crazy plays in this. I mean, there was one late on that game-winning drive. There was another one where it was like an out route thrown way inside of him, and he does that Kyle Pitts thing of just reaching back and snagging it one-handed. And they were saying like he trapped it against his back. He didn't even do that because it was facing the opposite direction. He just like snagged it one-handed and then just like hit it behind his own back in the act of sort of, recentering himself and carrying on running. You can understand why the fantasy community gets frustrated with Arthur Smith, It's like, you can use these people more than just like, hey, there's 5 attempts in the game, and who knows when they're going to come, right? It's going to be random, but be ready. It's like, what? Why are some of these other players getting any attempts? Why are we throwing the ball to Scotty Miller? Why? I know he made a play, but why is he even getting the opportunity?
Because he caught a 46-yarder on his only target.
Who cares? Kyle Pitts would have done that.
Scotty
Throw
Miller
the ball
would
to
have
Kyle Pitts
revenge
more, or Drake London more. Just stop throwing it to the people that don't belong in the field.
Is the fantasy community grinding the film to see if there are some plays where Kyle Pitts is available, where they're scheming it up for him and it's just not there, or he's taken away by the defense? The fantasy community digging deep into that?
There's plenty more plays that Kyle Pitts or Drake London could be making. I feel like Arthur Smith tries to outthink things too much. There's a bunch of sort of soccer analogies. Like Pep Guardiola used to constantly outsmart himself in the biggest game possible. Like, they're going to be expecting my normal, unstoppable juggernaut of a team, so let's play without any midfielders today. Like, that's how we'll outsmart them. Or there was a line in a sitcom where it's like they were Napoleonic Wars. We're going to station all of our troops in Alaska just in case Boney's trying to trick us by coming via the North Pole. It's like, he probably won't, though, Like, Just throw the ball to Drake London and Kyle Pitts. You don't need to outsmart it. Like, they're good. They'll win. That's probably a better option than scheming up plays for Jonnu Smith and Van Jefferson and Scotty Miller. It's just easier.
On this Victory Monday for the Atlanta Falcons, the first place Atlanta Falcons, you're going to criticize Arthur Smith. He's just caring about the W.
Yeah,
and
but
they got it.
Half the time he doesn't.
Falcons 16-13. I want to shout out David Onyemata. We highlighted him in the preview a little bit. One of the better free agent signings of this offseason, 3-year deal that Onyemata signed. Go watch him. If you're going to go rewatch this game, go check out number 90 for the Falcons. Resetting the line of scrimmage over and over and over again in the run game, plus 5 or 6 pressures as a pass rusher. Onyemata on pace for his best season. He was drafted in 2016, hung out with the Saints and was a really good rotational player for a few years, but he has been just outstanding this year for the Falcons. Calais Campbell had a beautiful strip sack of Baker Mayfield as well. I mean, again, I want to highlight the 4-3 Falcons for all the things that you just mentioned, where they've got these playmakers that they can get the ball to and make it a little bit more explosive on offense and more consistent. The Falcons continue to get really good performances by some of their off-season additions on the defensive side of the ball. So Onyemata, Campbell, Calais Campbell, they deserve some credit, especially what Onyemata's done so far this season.
Onyemata's been great this year.
Yes, he has. All right, let's wrap up the 1 o'clock games. Chicago Bears 30, Las Vegas Raiders 12. Bears moved to 2-5, as we mentioned. The 1-5 teams dominant yesterday. Really good performances by the 1-5 teams. Raiders fall to 3-4. Brian Hoyer got the start for the Raiders with Jimmy Garoppolo hurt once again. Aiden O'Connell did see some relief work. It was a little hit or miss. The story, of course, the Chicago Bears start Division II. Rookie quarterback Tyson Bagent finishes 21 of 29 for $162 and a touchdown. 5.6 yards per attempt. Deontay Foreman had the receiving touchdown, also finds the end zone twice on the ground. It is interesting when you have backup QBs, when the offense looks just completely different. And so much like you're just kind of describing Tyrod Taylor and the Giants, it's like, hey, it just looks different than when Daniel Jones ran it, or when Andy Dalton comes in for Bryce Young. It looked different. This Bears offense looked completely different than the Justin Fields offense. I'm not saying it was necessarily better. I'm just saying the style was different, right? You had a quarterback who was hitting everything underneath. There was a bunch of little dink and dunk, and run game was effective, and Bears get the win.
You're saying the Bears should bench Justin Fields for Tyson Bagent?
Oh, I see what you've done there, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. No, you're right. I mean, that's what's happening this week in Chicago, right? Is Bagent the future?
Oh, there's going to be some spicy takes out there.
Is he the future in Chicago?
I liked our buddy Greg Rosenthal's tweet that even if the Raiders lose, these are valuable reps in Brian Hoyer's development.
That's really good.
Just a waste of everybody's time sitting through a Brian Hoyer game.
We have a lot of dedicated listeners, some new ones. But you have a long-standing take that you want nothing to do with the backup quarterback who we completely know who he is.
No, it's
Brian
not that.
Hoyer's in year 14 of his career.
No. What my objection is the backup quarterback that actually cannot play games. That guy has no business being on an NFL roster because he's there essentially just for the work he does as a coach. He's there for the work he does in the meeting room, which doesn't require a roster spot being spent on him. Those guys I have no time for. Brian Hoyer is in a different category where he can play in games, and we saw the first time Aiden O'Connell played that the difference. So I think you kind of generally miscalculate just how prone young bad quarterbacks can be at putting the ball in harm's way, right? You sort of generally think that a bad quarterback is a bad quarterback, and what's the difference between 4, 5, 6 turnover-worthy plays in a game, right? I suspect if you're underestimating the depths to which that can get to, and actually a really bad quarterback over a full game might have 10 turnover-worthy plays. And the difference between... So you tend to think of guys like Brian Hoyer, well, he's not going to put the ball in harm's way. He will, because he's not that good. but he'll put it in harm's way less than a guy like Aiden O'Connell, who might go out there and throw like 8 turnover-worthy plays. And at some point, the team looks at this and says, you know what? The rookie's not ready. At least with Brian Hoyer, we know there'll probably only be a couple of glaring bad plays. And we can live with that because that gives us a chance to win. It's just miserable, though. So I don't like it. But I understand why those guys exist in a way that's different from like the last several years of Matt Castle's career, where like you couldn't put him on the field. He couldn't play. So he's literally just chewing up a roster spot because he does good prep work or whatever. And that's just silly.
Matt Castle's catching strays now.
Yeah.
Yeah. He always seems to. That's your example.
I mean, that's one example. There's plenty of them.
Yeah, so the Raiders had been playing pretty well, overachieving a little bit. This has to be, even with Hoyer at quarterback, this has to be a disappointment. The Bears had one of the worst defenses in the league. Now, on one hand, Bears defense did play much better. On the other hand, it was Brian Hoyer. You had Davante Adams. And then there are macro things, which is like Davante Adams is a way better football player, especially relative to his position, than Brian Hoyer.
Yes.
But sometimes Brian Hoyer throws a perfect fade pass. I mean, that wasn't even close. Adams, was it Stevenson? Whooped somebody on the route.
He wrecked
Probably
him
Stevenson.
on the release.
You don't see, usually the corners, within a step on a fade.
Yeah, not this time.
This was 3 to 6 steps
Right.
of wide open, and Davante Adams drops it. Sometimes the better player lets down the worst player. And when all that adds up, the Raiders get whooped.
So remember Davante Adams, we talked about it in the pregame, the preview show. Davante Adams had been making comments about how, look, I just want to win the game, and clearly the best way for that to happen is for you to give me the ball all the time because I'm the best player here. And you're like, all right, I can see logic to that. So Davante Adams had 7 targets in the first quarter, all of which seemed to come in like the first drive. It was like they just, Adams wants the ball more? Right, well, let's see how that works. And every play was just a target to Davante Adams. And to be fair, it was working for a while. And then they kind of went away from that. You got the Brian Hoyer performance. But it was, let me see. First play, Brian Hoyer, short left to Davante Adams. Second play, Brian Hoyer, short middle to Davante Adams. Third pass, Brian Hoyer, short left to Davante Adams. Fourth pass, Brian Hoyer, incomplete to Davante Adams. And that was a pass breakup by Tyreek Stevenson. So literally the first 4 pass
Keep going.
plays.
I want you to read every play in the game.
Just the pass plays. You don't need all of them. So the first 4 plays were pass plays. First 4 pass plays were to Davante Adams. They literally just went, he wants the ball more? Let's see how that works. And I've never seen a more stark example of a guy like a receiver crying for the ball and then being answered immediately by, okay, cool. That works for us.
Yeah. Squeaky wheel game, Sam. Squeaky-ish wheel. Credit the Bears. What did you think of Bajan's performance? It was, again, the stats don't jump off the stat sheet or anything like that, but it was completely different, right? Whereas a Justin Fields isn't really thrown underneath a lot. It's a lot more boom or bust. He's going to take a lot of sacks and also get the ball down the field. Bajan, hits Deontay Foreman underneath, and Foreman breaks a tackle, gets into the end zone for a touchdown. A lot of underneath stuff for the Bears here.
A lot of underneath stuff. It was one of those it's the exact opposite of a Justin Fields performance. It's like quietly efficient and understated, and if you don't make a big mistake, that works. It's like It's pretty good. The problem with like this, remember last time Bajan played, it's like who's another one of those guys where the narrative was, well, outside of the glaring mistake, it was pretty good. Well, this was that game, right? You didn't have the glaring mistake, so it was generally pretty good.
That was your take. That's what you said.
That's what I mean.
Like ignore the 2 bad plays. It was not bad.
Well, this was that game where you didn't have those 2 bad plays that you had to ignore, so it was generally pretty good. And he made a few of those kind of high leverage plays. He had a couple of scrambles in there that were good. After a touchdown, he's like working the crowd. Early on, he's like getting the crowd involved. I kind of like Bajan's moxie. I think he's got a little bit of swag to him. The guy from where he's from has no business having. Division II. They kept saying he'd won the Division II Heisman, because you have to say the Division II Heisman because nobody even knows what the hell that is.
Don't mock. As a former Division II preseason All-American.
Right.
Do not mock Division II.
Do you know what the Division II Heisman is actually called?
No.
Then shut up.
I just want to stand up for other fellow Division II athletes.
Yeah.
Okay. As a former Division II professional athlete. And yes, I was a preseason All-American in 2003. I was not a postseason All-American, but a preseason All-American per Baseball America.
Okay.
In 2003. I need to start putting that on the resume.
Yeah, right next to your Hall of Famers.
Preseason Division II All-American. Does that count as All-American?
What the hell do I know?
I got to find that. It's in an old Baseball America issue. I was very excited. Coming off a Division II World Series performance, and they were like, just pick the guy with the most wins on this team. We'll make him a preseason All-American. There it is. That was me. So I appreciate Bajan. You got to have some moxie if you're a Division II player.
Yeah.
Right? Last year at this team, he's just playing D2 games. You know?
Winning the D2 Heisman that nobody knows
Winning the D2 Heisman. I think our guy Thor Nystrom too said something like, in the playoffs, you sacked like 8 times and got wrecked in the D2 playoffs or whatever.
Did he win?
I don't remember. I was winning games here in the NFL.
Deontay Foreman had a great game.
I wanted to highlight, Foreman and then Darrington Evans. I mean, third and fourth string, basically, right? You don't have Khalil Herbert. You don't have Roshan Johnson. And, you just never know when Deontay Foreman is going to look like he did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And looking
Or
really
even last year. I mean, he had a few of those games last year.
He did have some of those games last year. You never know when they're going to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
So, impressive all-around win by the Bears. Shout out to Jaquan Brisker as well with a really nice game for the Bears at safety. Flying downhill, making plays in the pass game and the run game. And Gervin Dexter with a good game.
Yeah. So
and Tyree Wilson. I want to highlight all the non-model guys. Go ahead.
Tyree Wilson
update.
Gets his first career sack.
It was on a Hail Mary attempt.
Yes, by Nathan Peterman.
Oh, by Peterman.
Yeah.
How bad is Bajan's arm that Peterman is the...
He seems to be didn't he get a Hail Mary attempt last year or the year before from, again, same idea, like the designated Hail Mary guy? Does Peterman have like a weirdly insane arm that I'm not aware of?
No, I think what's happening is there's an inside joke around the NFL where Peterman's career stat line is so bad. They were like, let's get him out there for the Hail Mary. Can he average an interception every other throw? Can we get to where Nathan Peterman's career stat? This is why these shows go long.
The entire league is colluding to ensure that Nathan Peterman's passer rating just stays at 0 for his entire career.
He has this is good stuff, Sam. He has a career passer. So his career passer rating is 39.4.
Well, okay.
How about that?
Yeah.
4 touchdowns, 13 picks.
Ouch.
In his career. Somebody out there is throwing Peterman in there for the chuckles.
But we actually need interceptions because just incomplete passes is going to actually raise his passer rating.
It's true.
Yeah.
Had he just thrown the ball away, the passer rating would have gone up. Would have gone up.
Yeah. So anyway, Peterman is like running to the left and just spends his life trying to wait for this pass to manufacture, and by the time he actually gets it out of his hand, he got sacked by Tyree Wilson. That was our friend Josh Dubow from the AP. Tyree Wilson had been the only top 10 draft defensive lineman / edge rusher in the last 15 years with 0 quarterback hits, 0 sacks, and 0 tackles for loss in the first 6 games of his career.
Wow. And he's the first-round pick to catch that many strays, 6 straight weeks on the PFF NFL podcast.
I mean, non-model guy.
Well, you have to highlight the non-model guys.
We pointed this out to Trev, right? Like when you rocked up there and put him like 127th in
I heard you talking
your
about
big board, and we were like, no, you can't. That's too far. That's too bad. You can't do that. You're making us look silly. Maybe he is the 127th best player in the draft.
He turned the corner, got the sack yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Good win.
Other crazy stat in this draft, or other crazy stat in this game, and I don't know how far this pushed. This was just one of those graphics that pops up on the screen during the game. Max Crosby had played 233 consecutive defensive snaps, which apparently is the longest streak in the NFL among defensive linemen since at least 2016. You know what the last player to do that was?
Chandler Jones.
No, Olivier Vernon.
Olivier Vernon, huh?
Had 280 back in 2016.
Impressive.
That's insane. 233 or 280 consecutive snaps from a defensive lineman is bananas.
Yeah, at a position that usually rotates.
Well, particularly, yeah. I mean, some teams, those guys are playing 50% of the snaps, whereas Crosby is playing every snap.
Yeah, that is really impressive. Bears move to 2-5. Raiders fall to 3-4. Going to tell you about our partners, AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. Drink it every single day here on the PFF NFL podcast. I gave AG1 a try because need those nutrients, Sam. Need those nutrients every single morning. Take it with my coffee. Makes me feel great. Great way to start the day. That's it. All great athletes, like former Division II preseason All-Americans, have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies, and a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. A lot of them, athletes, they drink AG1, and that's why I'm a huge fan. With every daily serving, we're setting ourselves up for success with 75 high-quality ingredients that give us the key daily nutrients to support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It's this micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody take great care of their health every single day. And covering those nutritional bases for the day literally couldn't be easier, which is why I trust AG1. You just mix one small scoop with water, drink it first thing every morning, and you're done. I also love that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good, if you ask me. It's a really daily effective habit with high-quality sourced ingredients, a win-win for all of us here on the PFF NFL podcast. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. So you just have to go to drinkag1.com/PFF. That's drinkag1.com/PFF. Be sure to check it out. On to the 4 o'clock games here, Sam. Starting with the 4-2 Pittsburgh Steelers, 24. Los Angeles Rams, 17. Steelers, much like the Browns, moved to 4-2. In another one where you come out of... The first comment in the YouTube chat today was, how did the Steelers win?
It's every week.
Every single week. But yeah, Kenny Pickett and George Pickens once again make plays down the stretch.
Yep.
And TJ Watt didn't do a whole lot as a pass rusher, but had an outstanding interception to kick off the second half. Great play. Really a great play. Just a simple little return route, little in and out route, and Watt, who was dropping into coverage on a 3-man rush, just boom, jumps it like a DB. Awesome play by TJ Watt, and that facilitated the Steelers' comeback.
Yeah, it's also so this was like an encapsulation of both team seasons. The Steelers somehow are in these games where you're like, how are they winning this game? And then the Rams, for as well as Stafford is playing and as well as some of the receivers make plays, they don't actually score. So, like, when you look at Matthew Stafford's stats for the season, it's like you were talking about how you don't even look at guys' sort of box score numbers, right?
Yeah.
I looked at Stafford's during the week, and it's like, what? He's got like 5 touchdowns, 6 now, right?
Yeah, we broke it down on the preview show. I can't believe Stafford's stats are that bad.
Right. The idea that Stafford doesn't have like 15 touchdowns this season is insane given how he's been playing. So, again, Stafford's out here. There's a few nice passes. Puka Nakua's making crazy plays. There's a few ridiculous plays left, right, and center. And you're like, but they're not actually scoring.
Yeah.
And the longer that goes on, the more chance there is that Pittsburgh does and eventually, is leading the game and then wins.
It is just, from that perspective of, watching multiple games at the same time, it did feel like every time I'm looking up, Puka Nakua's making a play. He had another ridiculous catch along the sideline. Another, the toe heel moment, Sam, that you like to talk about.
Such a stupid rule.
But also Puka just looks fast, too. I mean, again, the Rams scored 17 points and they lost the game. So I don't want to sit here and, just talk them up like they just scored 30 and won. But Puka looked even better than he did earlier in the season, outrunning Now, the defense finishes with a $154 on 8 catches.
Also, he out-targeted Cooper Kupp by a distance. He had double the number of targets Cooper Kupp did.
Kupp had a 24-yarder in there, a couple drops early on, back-to-back drops.
Right. But remember, people were, as soon as Cooper Kupp gets back, Nakua is going to disappear. They quite clearly, can coexist. And actually, in a game like this, Nakua ends up getting 12 targets to Kupp's 6, and obviously had way more production as well, in part because of Kupp's drops. But not only can they coexist, but Nakua can still be the primary receiver in a given game.
This was also one of the games where our our pregame narrative wasn't necessarily correct. The Rams' offensive line didn't necessarily collapse. Like I said, T.J. Watt was not a dominant pass rusher in this game whatsoever. Nick Herbig. Nick Herbig comes in, gets a nice sack early on. But other than that, like the Rams' offensive line played great, or played well from a pass pro standpoint. That's usually what helps the Rams' offense collapse. But yeah, the Steelers made big plays. The T.J. Watt thing was huge, that interception. And then offensively, again, why does it feel uncomfortable? Because the Steelers' offense kind of trudges along for much of the game, and then basically Jaylen Warren makes some plays and George Pickens makes some plays. And that's the other – I think that's the other part that makes it – and Deontay Johnson with a huge play in the comeback attempt. Deontay Johnson coming back is a big boost for this team. We mentioned he's usually in a possession type of role, but he has that big gain on in the fourth quarter for the Steelers. George Pickens has a huge gain when the Steelers are trying to run out the clock, when they're leading. We'll get to the last play, the QB sneak, to end the game in a minute, but for what you want to say about the Steelers offense schematically, it still comes down to like when Pickens makes plays on the outside and you have Deontay Johnson and you have Jaylen Warren making some plays, that's when they look much better. That's part of the reason why we kind of liked the Steelers before the season, because we know these playmakers are effective.
Yeah, that is the story for Pittsburgh this year, is that the scheme is still rough. The scheme is bad. But they do have a really good collection of playmakers, and they're deep as well. Like, okay, sometimes these guys don't look great when players are missing, or they're sort of artificially high on the depth chart or the pecking order relative to where they should be. But like Connor Hayward made some plays in this game as well, and when they've got Pickens, Hayward, Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris is still a good player, Jaylen Warren, Calvin Austin barely played in this game, but we've seen the plays that he can make earlier in the season. This is a good collection of talented playmakers that can cause real problems for anybody, and they can overcome bad scheme. Like, they can just win one-on-one. There are schemes out there that don't put their players in a particularly good position, but basically just go, this is what we do, go out there and beat your guy. And that's kind of what the Steelers are asking these guys to do, and they're good enough to get that done sometimes. But when it works, it looks good because they're able to just, like, George Pickens is a beast when the ball goes in his general direction. And even in this game, like, he ends up with over 100 yards and makes a few plays. He was really close to making another couple as well.
Yeah. And Pickens, he looks faster, a little bit quicker this year as well. He's not just a contested catch guy this year. Remember, he started off terrible with the contested catches, but it's back, right? And what are the big plays the Steelers had? Back shoulder to Pickens. Pickett makes a great throw up the seam to Pickens with about 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, under pressure, gets the ball to him. And I mentioned that Deontay Johnson play, beginning of the fourth quarter, Pickett hits him, and Deontay Johnson runs away from the defense for a 39-yarder. And that was when the Steelers only had 10 points, right? So they're down 17-10. Deontay Johnson makes the big play, gets them into range. Jaylen Warren finds the end zone. So, yeah, to me, the story is Steelers playmakers make some plays, and they did just enough defensively to take Kupp out of the game. Puka Nacua got his, but the Rams are the team that's starting to look decent on paper as far as Stafford, his playmakers, the way Stafford's throwing the ball. But to your point, they're not able to find the end zone whatsoever. And then the final sequence of the game, Steelers go for it. There was a lot of these, Sam. There was a lot of these.
Just before that, though. So it's 3rd and 8. He took a shot to Deontay Johnson. Witherspoon breaks it up, and they call pass interference on it, which looked like a pretty weak pass interference call.
I thought that was a really bad pass interference call.
Yeah. Anyway, that's basically the game, that first down. But then Deontay Johnson gets flagged for taunting on that pass interference call, which makes it, now it's an offsetting call. Now it's a do-over, and it doesn't count. They went from game's basically done, you just got a first down through pass interference, to it's offsetting penalties, we do 3rd and 8 all over again. That is one of the worst penalties you will see anybody commit in the course of an NFL season. So they go for it again, 3rd and 8. They only pick up 7, And now you're in that 4th-and-1 situation where you decide, do we go for it, try and pick up the first down and end the game?
Where do they need to get to? I'm trying to rewatch this play. So Pickett goes QB sneak. At this time, the Rams have no timeouts. So it's 2:24 left in the fourth quarter. So the Steelers are in this position, which we see a lot during the week now, or during the every single week. One play away from winning. It's
Right.
4th down. It wasn't in their own territory or anything. It was on the fringe of field goal range. It wasn't a crazy decision by Tomlin. It was pretty reasonable. And it looks like Pickett just falls straight down to the ground. He kind of looked short.
Yeah.
They called him short initially, right?
I think so.
And then they said, nope, got it. And the Rams couldn't challenge because the play clock, the game clock, goes down to 2 minutes, but the play itself was not inside of 2 minutes, so it's
Right.
not an automatic challenge. And the Rams had no timeout, so they couldn't challenge it.
He looked way short, and I couldn't work out whether the spot was bizarrely generous or the unofficial first down line on the TV was just way off, which you see every now and again, right? The yellow line, they've just got it drawn like half a yard in the wrong place.
Right.
I don't know if that was the case or if they gave him a bizarrely generous spot, but he went down like he did the Matthew Stafford sneak, right? Where the quarterback just kind of like drops instead of like burrowing forward.
Yeah.
It was terrible. It didn't look like he got it at all. And then somehow they gave him the first down. Game over.
He got in the end zone on a sneak earlier. That was a sneak, right? The Pickett's earlier touchdown. Remember last year it was like, wow, the Steelers' offense is so good now they can sneak it. It added this whole new dimension because Kenny Pickett is
whole new world.
is a QB sneak guy. Big Ben would never do that. But yeah, this wasn't his best sneak, but apparently it still worked. So our preseason Steelers hype was correct, Sam. They're 4-2.
The first sneak, by the way, kind of did a similar thing. Like his sneak technique appears to be to just kind of launch himself low. Just generally throw yourself towards the B gap.
He's got some spastic movements. A little spastic sneaker. But it worked.
You should go watch his touchdown sneak. It's pretty funny.
That's what he's kind of like when Sam Howell runs. Let me go check it out again. Let's all watch it together.
Let's all watch it except nobody else
Except
can.
nobody
It's
can
just
see
you
it.
and me.
Yeah, when I was watching him yesterday, that did kind of come to mind. Like he's kind of crazy looking.
It's not the best sneak technique in the world. In fact, it looks like he's been watching Matthew Stafford's sneak technique, which is the worst thing you can possibly do.
What is that? Yeah.
Yeah. It's not great.
So the touchdown one, it was because who was it? Sayamalu actually makes a decent block on it. So I think he was like he was waiting for contact and it wasn't there. He tried to like throw his shoulder into a defensive tackle who didn't exist because the block was actually good. No, that was a good B gap sneak. This is why I'm saying you don't necessarily need the tush push, right? You have multiple sneak techniques. You can A gap it. If A's taken, you can go B.
Well, remember, there was a period of time where like Tom Brady was unstoppable just on the quarterback sneak. We didn't need
this is what I'm saying. You have multiple techniques.
Right.
You can burrow on the goal line. You can go over the top.
But wasn't there
you can go B gap, and if all of that's taken, you can run wide zone. That's your QB sneak package.
The Eagles are running this thing at like a 90% success rate, right? Wasn't Brady ahead of that for most of his career, just in terms of regular quarterback sneaks? Nobody was campaigning to ban the quarterback sneak just because Brady was unstoppable.
Well, they want to ban this for injury purposes.
No, that's what they're saying they want to ban it. Nobody actually wants to ban it for injury purposes. Everyone wants to ban it because the Eagles are too good at it.
Because it's boring. It's boring.
Like, we're going to dress this up as
Football
a safety
players don't
concern.
like rugby.
We're going to dress this up as a safety concern. But really, the problem is we don't like that the Eagles are doing it and we don't like the play.
All right. Seattle Seahawks 20, Arizona Cardinals 10. Seahawks cover the spread. We go to 4-2. By the way, as of right now, I think I have 2 wins on the week, maybe 1.
That's not great.
This was like a last year throwback. This was my only win. This is why it comes up. I think this is the only game I picked correct. I might have 1 win this entire week, but you have like 3.
Yeah.
And then Harry has 7.
There were a lot of games that didn't make any freaking sense.
Yeah, there were. Seattle 20-10. They moved to 4-2. Cardinals move to 1-6.
Mm-hmm. Got away from them in the second half again.
It did.
It was a classic Cardinals game. Like, they got down early, and then they fought back. Nah, we're not going quietly into the night.
Yeah.
And we made it a tough game, and then eventually the better team just pulls away.
Well, Geno Smith made some beautiful throws in this game, but he had the same old, red zone, another bad red zone interception by Geno Smith, second one in 2 weeks for him. After not throwing one last year, despite leading the league in turnover-worthy plays in the red zone. But, like I said, Geno also had some nice plays in here. Jake Bobo with that beautiful touchdown that was in the end zone on a contested catch. Jackson Smith and Jigba with a touchdown in there as well. So you started to get some rookie contributions from the Seahawks passing attack.
Bobo over Starling Thomas, the fifth, right? Fourth, fifth?
I think he's the fifth.
Fifth?
Yes.
Was like an undrafted free agent bowl.
I love it.
Taking place down there. So the Jake Bobo touchdown. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it short.
There's not much else to talk about in this game, so you have a little bit of leeway to get into the discussion here.
I forget who it was earlier this season, but somebody had the classic toe heel catching the ball, sort of backing up, going out of the end zone backwards play. I can't remember who it was, but they had like the perfect example where they caught the ball, came down, and their toes were in bounds, right? And then they're because when you land like that, your heel then comes down, and the heel comes down out of bounds. By NFL rule, that is an incomplete pass, right? But apparently, if you do that facing any other direction and your foot comes down in any other aspect, it's okay. So I already thought it was ridiculous that if your toe comes down backwards and then your heel comes down, it's incomplete. But if your toe comes down forwards and nothing else comes down, it's complete. To me, that's a kind of silly divergence of the rules. It's even more ridiculous when what happened yesterday in this game and the Puka Nacua catch happened, which is the exact same thing as the toe-heel thing backwards, but facing in a different direction. So Bobo comes down, he gets a toe down inbounds, and then his foot comes down sideways, not backwards, sideways, out of bounds. Apparently that's cool. That's okay. And Nacua, the same thing. His was even more close to being backwards, but it was toe comes down. You can freeze frame it, and the toe is down. There's grass around the foot. It's in bounds, and then the foot collapses sort of sideways and backwards, and apparently that doesn't count. So we have this ridiculous rule where if you're facing any other direction and your toe hits first in bounds, and then the foot comes down out of bounds, it's okay. That's toe drag. That's elite receiver play. But if you're facing backwards and your toes land in bounds, like there's a gap between that and anything else coming down, and then your heel comes down out of bounds, that's incomplete. Your foot came down out of bounds. That's just dumb. That's an idiotic, inconsistent rule that makes no sense. And that we've now seen, I don't think I've ever seen before in the same season, so clear an example of, this one is out of bounds and this one is in bounds, and it's the same play, just facing a different direction. We got two of them this week, and I forget who had the play earlier in the season when it was the perfect toe-heel thing. But I was kind of surprised that both these plays stood on replay. They both looked at him, and they were like, nope, that's good. That's fine. Nakua's one and the Jake Bobo play. To me, all of them should be touchdowns, but apparently they're not.
Well explained, Sam. I mean, I think the way you just explained it, it's clear as day. You have been able to explain the ability to distinguish between what a touchdown is or what a catch is and what a catch isn't. So the fact that we have clear and defined rules tells me it's fine. We have clear and defined rules.
But the rules are dumb.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be like that.
You disagree with the rules?
The rule, it should be if a part of your foot to establish, being in bounds comes down and it's in the end zone and there's nothing out of bounds, it should be a touchdown. The fact that your heel subsequently comes down out of bounds is irrelevant, as clearly demonstrated by the fact that it is on this play. If the heel was something that made you, all of your foot needs to be down in bounds. Number one, there would be no toe drag swag plays ever, which is dumb. And number two, plays like this would be illegal. Since they're not, how can you call it out of bounds when it happens going backwards?
So you want to lean on the cool rule here again?
Not even the cool rule. We already do this for every other play than the one that isn't called that way. It's a bizarre, dumb, illogical exception.
Devin Witherspoon's still awesome.
Yes.
For the Seahawks.
he is a throwback to like late 90s, early 2000s corners, where those guys were like hitting, were violent, aggressive, physical, in addition to being good cover guys. Like, he reminds me of, players like Antoine Winfield, like the original, the senior. Like, he's that type of corner.
Yeah, I don't like throwing Antoine Winfield comps around because he was unique, and I also gave Tyrann Mathieu that comp as well coming out. But yeah, Antoine Winfield, for those who don't remember, he could play outside, but then when he found his home in the slot, he really was like an extra linebacker there. And so Witherspoon so far this year has played outside. He's played in the slot. He has a 90 run defense grade this year.
Which is very Winfield.
Which is very Winfield-like. And that's because Witherspoon loves to hit.
Yes.
And what you described in the draft process is his anticipation to be in the right place.
But that's the thing. The thing that separated Winfield from even other physical corners at the time is I don't know how many times I've seen a defense where the physical tone setter was a cornerback. Usually that's a linebacker or a defensive lineman or a Cam Chancellor safety, like the guy who makes that hit that sort of gets everybody jazzed and gets like the defense, headed in the right direction is very rarely a corner. Winfield was the physical tone setter of that Vikings defense. He would shut down like the screen game or anything short or runs to his side of the field. At corner, he was the guy that would stuff them. That's what Witherspoon does. Like, Witherspoon is making these hits that get everybody on defense going wild because they're nuts.
Witherspoon had an interception negated in the end zone. And that was, the explosive play, the big hits and everything you're talking about. This was just a really nice zone play where he just read it and caught the underthrow, ends up getting negated. But yeah, he was flying around, making plays, breaking up passes. And as we mentioned, gets dirty in the run game. You can blitz him. Witherspoon, outstanding once again for the Seahawks.
The Barbarian had a punt return fumble recovery.
No sacks in a while, though. No sacks.
Well, look, you gotta when things aren't going your way as a pass rusher, you gotta lean back on your special teams, expertise.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, as much as I complain about the rules thing, the Jake Bobo catch, by the way, was spectacular.
Give some
kudos
credit
to that.
That was awesome.
The Josh Dobbs scored a touchdown, I think, on a run where this drives me nuts from defenders. Like, the plays where they just hit people rather than tackle. Like, he scored a touchdown where I think he gained 10 more yards because Tariq Woolen just tried to shoulder charge him. You're like, that's not going to tackle most NFL players because they can bounce. Like, if you don't actually wrap and try and bring the guy to the ground, and by the way, there's no reason not to in this scenario. The only reason to not try and wrap and tackle the guy is if you're going for like a punch on the ball and trying to spring it loose, or the hit is going to blast him out of bounds. But if you're just like hitting him in the open field with room to run, there's a pretty good chance that he's just going to bounce off your hit because you don't weigh, 280 pounds. You're not like LT out there. You're not going to deliver the kind of hit that's going to like completely decleat him. And if he stays on his feet, you've just given up a touchdown rather than setting him up first and goal from the 10.
It is interesting the difference. Remember last year at this time, Tariq Woolen had a bunch of interceptions, a whole bunch of big plays as a 6'4", long, athletic corner. And people wanted to put him in the Sauce Gardner Defensive Rookie of the Year conversation. And honestly, one of the things that kept him out of there was his missed tackles, Woolen. Missed tackles and the way he played the run. Kind of the opposite of what we just talked about Devin Witherspoon. Obviously, a corner's number one role is covering, is playing coverage. But because we're grading every player on every play, you do kind of highlight those. They show up in the grade, and Woolen has never really been a great run defender. But Witherspoon is just an all-around force so far for the Seahawks.
It's actually a worse play than I thought it was now that I've just watched it again. He hits him at the 15-yard line, and he actually has to deliberately avoid tackling him. Like, he's coming in from the side with a perfect angle to just two arms round, wrap tackle. Josh Dobbs is down at the 15-yard line. Instead, he actually turns himself away from Dobbs to be able to lead in and try and shoulder him, which actually punts him past Quandre Diggs, the safety, who then misses a tackle as well. It's just terrible defense. Like, Remember, we were talking about Winfield a minute ago. Like, Antoine Winfield makes a simple wrap tackle. Everyone's like, see, good run defender, solid play, and the defense now has a chance to make a stand on, from the 15-yard line in the red zone. Instead, because Tariq Woolen just tries to shoulder bump him out of the way, it's a touchdown.
You good now?
Yeah. Hate plays like that. Hate it. Just tackle the guy. Don't hit him. Tackle.
Was it worth 5 minutes?
Yes.
All right, cool. Denver Broncos 19, Green Bay Packers 17. Broncos, another 1-5 team, moving to 2-5 with the win. Packers fall to 2-4. Broncos defense. Look, I said for the preview show here, the Broncos defense was historically bad, and there's two ways of looking at that. On one hand, we're chasing history. On the other hand, it can't be that bad the whole time. And so the Broncos defense played much better in this game. Another weird game where you had some, Packers, one of their two touchdowns, right? In a contested possession in the end zone and a drop that lands in, was it Jaden Reed's hands, or did Jaden Reed drop it?
No, Dobbs dropped it.
Dobbs dropped it. Reed caught the touchdown. So Packers' two touchdowns were kind of half catches.
Half catches.
Yeah. Broncos win it 19-17.
There were a lot of people wanting the Dobbs touchdown. So it was one of those sort of simultaneous possession plays. They both go down clutching the ball, and simultaneous possession goes to the offense. There were people wanting that to be an interception because Surtain kind of got there first. And they're like, the second he hits 2 feet down in the end zone, that's his ball. Interception. Play's over. Like, is it though? I mean, technically maybe, but it's never been called that way, really. Other than the only time it was actually called that way wasn't that the ridiculous replacement refs thing where that's kind of how they came to that conclusion, right? Is he got the ball slightly first and at 2 feet down, therefore it's his.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, that's ridiculous.
That was if I remember correctly, the very last play. It was 2012, week 3. It was the very last play of the replacement refs.
Yes, this is what ended the replacement refs thing.
They did
like,
3
that's
weeks
how
of
bad
it.
the call was.
They may have missed a field goal, good, call the night before in Patriots-Ravens, I think it was. And then Monday Night Football, everybody's watching. They do the contested possession thing, and by Tuesday or Wednesday, like, all right, refs are back.
Yeah.
So
I don't think you tend to see it called that way, even if technically that might be true. I think this was the right call, simultaneous possession, offensive touchdown. So it was a strange game where we'd been kind of saying before that this group by the Packers are so inexperienced and not necessarily amazing across the board that they're all making mistakes and they can't really overcome those mistakes collectively. Well, they did in a couple of plays. Like, Romeo Dobbs drops the ball, Jaden Reed catches it.
Yeah.
So he overcame the mistake of his teammate, but it still wasn't enough to win the game overall.
Yeah, I mean, you just feel. So I see Packers fans kind of complaining about the lack of experience, and I think when we did our preview shows for the season, and after seeing Green Bay in person, you could see why maybe a year from now the Packers offense is really intriguing. Because, Jaden Reed has some playmaking ability, and Luke Musgrave is a big-bodied tight end who can move. And look, Romeo Dobbs is just – I don't know what to do with Dobbs because he's just an inconsistent football player, but you certainly see the ability, right? You see the body control. You see just a great feel for the position sometimes, and then other times it's like, dropping passes, and it's just not there. And Christian Watson, as much as I'm blinded by speed and big playability, how many times is Christian Watson just not in the right place at the right time? I thought he really screwed Jordan Love on an interception on the Monday Night Football game against the Raiders, where the subtle parts of receiver where you're just not working back to the ball, or you're not running the route at the right angle or at the right depth. Christian Watson has some of that, as much as, hey man, when he gets behind the defense, he's creating big play opportunities. All of those guys are in year 1 or 2. And it did make me think maybe a year from now the Packers offense will be there. And I think we're starting to see some of those growing pains over these last few weeks for the Packers after a really exciting start to the season, weeks 1 and 2.
Yeah, there's just too much not going well for them at the moment, and they're not able to overcome most of those mistakes, even if they got a couple of them in the game. The other notable thing from this game is Kareem Jackson ejected. He's now been fined over $90,000 this season.
Yeah, man,
that's an amazing.
He had was it just off that one hit?
Yeah, they ejected him for that hit.
I thought so. This is all relative here. I forget which weeks it was, but earlier in the year, Kareem Jackson had 2 egregious hits.
Yeah.
Like helmet to helmet, defenseless receiver, just really bad hits. It was like, dude, what are you doing at this point? I didn't think this one, it was on Musgrave?
Yes.
I didn't think this one was as bad as the ones earlier this year. There was probably a penalty. He was defenseless, but I mean, it was, you lead him with the shoulder. It may have not hit the helmet that much. Right?
No, so this
one was a lot closer than what Kareem Jackson was doing earlier in the season, is my point.
This one, so it was bad and it was a penalty. I don't think I'd have ejected him for it, but this was one of those classic ones where in rugby they would use the term mitigation, right? Like it's kind of a zero tolerance thing in terms of strict liability, right? You hit him in the head, therefore it's a penalty, but how severe the punishment is, we start to factor in mitigation. And one of the areas of mitigation was there a sudden change in height from the guy that got hit in the head, right? Like, did he drop into the hit, essentially, as opposed to did you hit him at head height the whole way? Musgrave catches this ball, and it's kind of spinning around, and in the course of spinning around, like, falls, right? So he drops like a foot in height as Jackson is already, like, predetermined that he's going to annihilate him with a hit. So is it reckless and dangerous and all those kinds of things? Yes. But did he crack him in the head because Musgrave dropped a foot in height before he hit him? Also, yes. So I would agree with you. Like, look, Jackson has history, extensive history, apparently, has been fined over $90,000 already this year. You don't give him the benefit of the doubt at that point. Like, he's already used up all of that. But this was far from the worst thing he's done this year.
Yeah, if rugby's using mitigation, the NFL says you control your helmet.
Right. The NFL uses no mitigation.
The NFL rule is actually pretty black and white because it's challenging making these calls, but it also defies the laws of physics, right? There is no mitigation. So anyway, Packers still had an opportunity, right? The Broncos had a game-winning field goal or go-ahead field goal. Packers had a game-winning drive attempt. Elkin Jenkins puts him in a hole with a holding penalty. 2nd and 20, Jordan Love misses a pass, and then it's 3rd and 20, and Love just kind of heaves it up.
Terrible interception.
I mean, it was, but it's also 3rd and 20. Now, I'm watching the play. What else do you have there? I think the fourth quarter comeback stat as a whole, like, I kind of like it because it does talk a little bit about game flow, and there's some luck involved, but game flow and taking chances properly and everything. On 3rd and 20, like, Love has a short side of the field out route for probably 10 that probably gets you into like a 4th and 10, 4th and 8 type of situation. And then you didn't have to make this play yet. You had $1:52 left in the game. You didn't have to heave it just yet.
I don't even have a problem with the decision, but you throw it earlier. Like, it's kind of open. He's got a route that's going to run. Like, the guy he's trying to beat is the other safety, not the one that picks it off, right? So when he looks at this,
it's horribly underthrown, but that's never on.
But it's horribly underthrown because it's so late. Like, he throws it, he's waiting until his guy essentially is running past the safety that he's trying to beat before he wants to put the ball in the air. If he throws that ball 10 yards earlier, it's probably going to beat the safety that he's trying to beat, and it's going to be so early that the other guy doesn't get a chance to come over and make the play anyway. I don't even necessarily have a problem with the decision. I just think he's way late on it.
Yeah, either way. It's pretty poor from a Packers perspective, and the Broncos played a much better game defensively.
Baron Browning looked much more like that random month where Baron Browning looked like the best defensive end in the NFL.
Is he Mr. October? Wasn't it around this time last year?
Maybe. So Baron Browning had a bunch of nice plays. Rashawn Gary continues to look like one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL. He's pretty close, I think, at this point to being like full workload again. They've really eased him back into it over the first third of the season. He played basically the same amount of snaps as Preston Smith at this point. I don't know if that's the max or if there's still another few plays to go, but Gary I think he has the highest pass rush win rate in the NFL at the moment.
He does. I did two things I looked up yesterday. Rashawn Gary, pass rush win rate, best in the NFL, best we've seen in history over a certain sample size. He's on pace. I mean, it's early in the season, but it's just for perspective purposes as well, because I was looking up Myles Garrett pass rush grade. Myles Garrett's on pace to crush the best pass rush grade we've given to an edge defender in history. Other side, Javonte Williams looked pretty good. The run game for Denver, Jaleel McLaughlin, usually, the usual 5 for 45 yards, because that's just what he does, and Russ played a pretty clean game.
Mm-hmm.
So Broncos move to 2-5. Two more games to discuss. Kansas City Chiefs 31, Los Angeles Chargers 17. Chiefs move to 6-1 on the season. Full control of the AFC right now, and then the Chargers fall to 2-4. Mahomes finishes with a ridiculous game, had over 300 yards in the first half. He goes 32 for 42 for 424, 4 touchdowns, had a pick in there as well. And then Travis Kelce, 12 catches for $179. Felt like he was just wide open over the middle of the field, just sitting there by himself for the majority of the game. PFF senior analyst Ben Stockwell said he was giving me a little breakdown on the Chargers' defensive game plan as he was grinding the film here.
Uh-huh.
It was either triple team Kelce, which they did it. They did a lot more of that in the second half. It was either triple team Kelce or leave him wide open. But he was quite open in the middle of the field.
Yeah,
for a lot of the game.
I kind of understand how he gets so open a lot because of the way those two operate. The sort of ad lib, find space, just adjust into the space. Like, there's a degree to which it's difficult to stop that because if you're playing zone, effectively he has license to just go where the space is, right? And it's quite difficult to shut that down as a defense without compromising everything else. So I kind of get how he consistently gets that open. What I'm confused by is actually how the rest of the play is designed that doesn't foul up his space. Like, how does he consistently find space without there being anybody else dragging defenders into it? It's almost like the entire play is designed, like a clear out route. We're going to send this guy vertically, and that's going to drag some defenders out of the way, and then there'll be a gap in the middle. It's like everything is a clear out, right? Everyone just sort of head to the perimeter of the field, and then that will drag all the defenders away, and then Kelce just needs to go the other place. And
we'll just play a little one-on-one.
Right, and then Kelce just finds where the one guy remaining is and goes in the opposite direction, and we've got a wide open first down. There must be something like that happening where, because every time he finds this wide open space over the middle, the most amazing thing to me is not the lack of proximity to a defender, it's the lack of proximity to another receiver. Like, nobody else in the Chiefs is anywhere near him.
Oh, I know. It really is unbelievable. So there's a whole bunch of that. Mahomes with an awesome scramble drill touchdown. And again, when we talk, kind of like what I described with the Ravens, the Chiefs offense, they've pretty much had 2 games this year, and they've been a good offense, but they've had 2 games this year where they looked like the Super Bowl champion Chiefs offense. Right. This is one of them, the Bears game a few weeks ago. But like, when the Chiefs are on, it's a combination of why aren't you covering this guy? Why are these receivers open? And then when the receivers aren't covered, Mahomes scrambles and creates, Marquez Valdes-Scantling coming from the other side of the field for a 46-yard touchdown on a scramble drill. So it's just like everything seems to be working. Mahomes was really sharp, again, other than just kind of like chucking it up for an interception. But early on, it was like a classic Chiefs-Chargers game, which is the Chargers defense they rarely stop the Chiefs. But the Chargers have some explosive, ability, and they hang with them, right? I mean, Joshua Kelly had a 49-yard touchdown in there, and then as the Chiefs tried to pull away, you have a 60-yarder to Josh Palmer, and it's like, all right, game on here. It's going to be Herbert versus Mahomes. It was 17-17 at one point after Herbert found Gerald Everett, and it was like, all right, we've got a shootout on our hands. But then just before the half, the Chiefs go 96 yards on 6 plays. Again, the explosive nature of the offense was in full effect yesterday for the Chiefs. Big plays to get off their own goal line, score with 21 seconds left in the half. They score, and then the Chargers get shut out in the second half.
Yeah.
To me, the story of the game was the complete nature of this game for the Chiefs, how great their offense looked again, but also the fact that, oh, by the way, the defense gave up some big plays early on, but they're still one of the best defenses in the league. They're giving up about 15 points a game, and that's the best defense we've seen in the Mahomes era.
Yeah, it was a strange performance from Herbert. In the first half, he played really well. Now, he also missed a touchdown again. Like, this is the second week in a row where he's missed what should have been a touchdown, just overthrows the receiver. But the first half, he was really good, and it looked like we might have this just incredible shootout. And for, like, Mahomes is going to lead the league in games where he threatens the single-game passing record at the half and then doesn't get anywhere near it by the end of it. He's done this several times. Remember the game where, like, Tyreek Hill had 200 yards in the first quarter or whatever it was, right? And then none of that happened. Like, it's like that game, Tyreek Hill was going to break the single-game pass or the single-game receiving record. Mahomes was going to break the single-game passing record. Neither of those happened. He had 321 passing yards at the half. The single-game record is, 554 or something?
Yep.
And has stood since God knows when. And then they didn't get that done in the half. But for the first half, like, Mahomes got his 300 yards. They're putting up insane numbers. Herbert is playing really well. Isn't quite as productive, but they're only a score down. And it looked like we were going to get this incredible battle. And then, the Chiefs kept going and the Chargers didn't really. Like, Herbert was not nearly as good in the second half, and the defense absolutely clamped down on him.
Charles Omenihu made his return for the Chiefs, made an impact. A couple sacks, had a batted pass that got intercepted. Remember, Herbert's coming in. Yeah. The Chargers are driving. They're in the red zone. Omenihu tips it, and it gets intercepted. That was all part of the second half shutout that the Chiefs threw. You mentioned the stat on Chris Jones.
Yeah.
Going back to the way the Chiefs built this team with Chris Jones, a defensive tackle who can line up on the edge. I'll let you talk about that stat. George Karlaftis had a bunch of pressures. Charles Omenihu comes back off suspension. Remember, he was my Tyree Wilson comp from a body type standpoint. Big and long. He can win inside. He can win outside. It feels like the Chiefs, not only have they been a very good defense, but now they've got the defensive line depth that they built and a whole bunch of different style pass rushers that they can move around. And once again, Chris Jones, when you throw him on the edge, he wins.
He really does. And he played on the edge quite a lot in this game. But he has the best – like, it feels when you're watching games with the Chiefs playing that Chris Jones sort of moves himself to the edge for the highest leverage plays. Like, he's decided he sort of can't play there full time. We know that doesn't really work. But if he lines up on the edge, he knows he'll have a quick win because he's 310 pounds, and it's a weird body type and just surprising deal for offensive tackles to deal with. And he almost always wins that first play. And he sort of times it for, like, the biggest plays in the game. So in this game, he lined up, I think, 10 snaps on the edge, and 6 of them were on third down. So he really does time it for, like, those high leverage situations. And it seems like he always wins. And I dialed up his pass rush win rate when he's lined up on the edge this season. And it's the best pass rush win rate of any player in the NFL. Like, it's whatever it was, 5 percentage points, 4 percentage points higher than Rashawn Gary, who, as you said, is on pace to, like, set the record, right?
Yeah.
Chris Jones is 4 percentage points better than that when he's lined up as an edge. So it really is like one of the biggest kind of cheat codes from a pass rushing standpoint in the NFL is the plays where Jones decides to go out and beat up on an offensive tackle.
It is amazing because when he was forced to play on the edge that one year, he wasn't great.
He was good, though.
But he wasn't great. Like, from, like, a down-to-down standpoint,
right.
It felt like the Chiefs are worse because they were so bad at
that was the big part.
The Chiefs were worse, though. But it does feel like when he goes there right now, he knows the move against this tackle that's going to work.
But I think
whether
it's also
shutting it down against the Bengals or late in the game, whatever it might be.
I think it makes a far bigger impact when he only does it 10 times in a game.
Right.
When he's out there every play, an offensive tackle has time to get used to this monster. And I think there's merit to the fact that now he's back to being 310, 315 pounds than there was when he had to lose weight to try and play on the edge full time. Like, that probably made a difference. I think one of the reasons it's so difficult to stop right now is because the dude is still 310. He's the same weight as the offensive tackle trying to block him. When he was slimmed down to like 285 or whatever he dropped to that time, I mean, you're 20 pounds lighter than you were. You're not as strong.
That's what, and again, that goes back to, I think when you have those different body types, even FAU and Ndike Azama, the first rounder, he hasn't had a great start to his career or anything, but he's got that, Gumby, flexibility aspect to him. Karl Loftus is a bull rusher. Ameni, who's got crazy length. Chris Jones is 310, as you mentioned, with quickness, speed, and power. If you're an offensive tackle, remember when we talked to a Mitchell Schwartz or a Joe Thomas on the show, how much they have to study their opposing pass rushers. So when you're not going up against one guy, you're going up against 3 or 4 different rushers, different body types. That is a fascinating, difficult task for a tackle, and the Chiefs are exploiting it.
So on the season, almost 80% of his snaps on the edge are lined up or are on 3rd and 4th down. And on just 3rd and 4th down, now look, we're getting into pretty small sample sizes at this point, so take the numbers with a grain of salt. But on 3rd and 4th down, his pass rush win rate is 39%. It goes up even higher. Like every single element of this, the more high leverage the situation, the more likely it is that Chris Jones is going to win.
I don't know if this is one of those regress to the mean or like the Chiefs found something type of deals.
I think they found something.
Yeah.
Now, it may regress to the mean anyway, but like I'm not saying he will be the most destructive pass rusher that we've ever seen if he continues doing this. But I do think that we found an element where he is more successful and more dangerous doing this than just rushing from the interior randomly, again. Like actually moving outside in high leverage situations seems to make a difference.
Chargers offense, I do believe, and Tony Romo did mention this, that they do miss Mike Williams. So you have a game like Josh Palmer had a fantastic game with 5 catches for $133, but it does feel this year where it's very fragile if, Keenan Allen heavy offense. You don't have that ability of when things are covered. And think about how many times I said that. The Ravens, there were plays where the Ravens were covered, but Lamar Jackson made a play. There were plays where the Chiefs were covered, right? The Chargers covered the Chiefs well, but Mahomes found a way to make a play. The Chargers equivalent to that was everything's covered. Well, Mike Williams will catch one. He'll flip the field for us with a big play. They're missing that. And I really feel like that was a big part of, the inconsistency in the second half. If the Chiefs aren't busting a coverage for a 60-yarder, what do you have? They could give the extra attention to Keenan Allen. You don't have enough other weapons. Quentin Johnston had his 1 catch for 20. He doesn't have the same type of ball skills that Mike Williams has to just, catch those back shoulders or, go up and win at the catch point over and over again. Makes the Chargers offense feel a little fragile here. But they fall to 2-4, man. For the 15th straight year. They've disappointed me.
Yeah. Still no real major impact from Joey Bosa. 28 pass rushes, 2 pressures.
Yeah, it felt like Mahomes had a lot of – it is funny when you see – it felt like he had a lot of time and ability to navigate. He had that another crazy 3rd and super long scramble for 20-plus yards, whatever, with 23-yarder. And then the next play – they played better in their gaps and everything. It is so difficult to figure out. Do you want to rush him? Do you want to make sure he's not going to escape? And I think that helps the Chiefs' offensive line and their ability to block. Plus, the Chiefs' offensive line does a nice job kind of locking those guys up so you can let Mahomes navigate. And I thought the O-line played great for the Chiefs. They played great all around.
Yeah.
Probably their most complete game, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, this was – we sort of said, like, if you look at their season, there was that one game against against Chicago when, they were threatening to hang 70 on them the way the Dolphins had just hung 70 on the Broncos before slowing down the second half. But, like, one game against terrible defense, we were like, this is the Chiefs we know and expect. Every other game, they kind of struggled on offense and really made it a grind. And this was the first one where that looked like the Chiefs again. Another element of that might be the, I think, steady emergence of Rashee Rice as maybe their best wide receiver. Marquez Valdes-Scantling had a big play for the first time in a while. Obviously, Travis Kelce was their number 1 guy. But, like, if Rashee Rice actually becomes their number 1 receiver and sort of elevates it in a way Sky Moore simply hasn't even threatened to do so far in his NFL career. I mean, that potentially moves a needle for them, like giving them a receiver that can make an impact as well as Travis Kelce.
All right, man, let's wrap it up. Is that every game? Make sure we didn't miss anything. Sunday Night Football, Philadelphia Eagles 31, Miami Dolphins 17. Eagles move to 6-1. Dolphins fall to 5-2. Jalen Hurts, a little banged up during the game. Ends up with a knee brace on his left knee during the second half, but still.
Was it that scramble that he got injured on? Because when he ran there, he looked like he was limping at the end of that.
I feel like Hurts has just been hurt the whole year. Something looks off, but more specifically, he started limping on that scramble, yes.
Yeah, but I don't know if that was, like, if he got hurt on that scramble or if he already been hurt and then it just, look, he's limping.
Yeah, Hurts just feels like he's been playing banged up for the majority of the season, whatever it is. But, yeah, he fought through it, man, made some big throws. A.J. Brown, 10 catches for $137. He made some huge plays for the Eagles, including breaking 2 tackles for a touchdown, had a 42-yarder when the Eagles were running the clock out with their, I call it the service academy drives, right? The long, slow drives, but they mixed it up with a 42-yarder for A.J. Brown to kind of seal the deal in this game against the Dolphins. Eagles did a really nice job against this Dolphins offense. Dolphins had a pick 6 in there on a tip pass. Other than that, though, Eagles hold the Dolphins offense to just 10 points.
Yeah. I mean, they shut down the run first and foremost, and then the pass game was a struggle off the back of that. The Eagles, I mean, both trenches, but the Eagles' defensive line they were wrecking Miami. Now, it's not necessarily the starting Miami offensive line. One of the most impressive elements of the Mike McDaniel thing has been that offensive line has looked pretty good.
Yes.
And it's not particularly good on paper. And a bunch of people were, like, Dolphins fans are in this weird world now where they're mental. But they're all complaining, like, oh, maybe the paper's wrong. Maybe this is just an amazing offensive line. Austin Jackson's a former first-round pick. He's clearly got talent, right? And same thing is true of Isaiah Wynn. This is a high-quality unit we've got right now. Like, okay, but it wasn't even good on the field, independent of, Mike McDaniel and this offense coming in. So let's settle down a little bit here. We know that this offense improves the performance of offensive line. Now, look, Teron Armstead is a really good player, but we also know he's going to miss time every year, and he's not out there in this game. That's a big factor. Kendall Lamb has been impressive stepping in when he's had to, but how good do we expect him to play? Robert Hunt, I think, is a pretty good player, but we're probably only still at 2 or 3 players in that line that are decent starters, and the other ones are potentially problematic. Austin Jackson has never been good and still isn't particularly good. Liam Eichenberg, a tackle in college, a guard in the NFL, is now playing center because of the reshuffles and the injuries. The line was just overmatched in this game and just couldn't handle the likes of Jalen Carter in particular, but Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, they got overwhelmed.
They did, and again, I don't want to, as I mentioned earlier, the Dolphins' offense technically got held to 10 points, but from what was the Eagles' part in that? There was a crazy drop by Tyreek Hill, wide open pass. It may not have been a touchdown. He's probably down. He would have been a touchdown. I think. Probably would have been, but there's a chance he's tackled at the 1 or 2 yard line. But either way, probably a dropped touchdown on 3rd down. Next play, this is the ball don't lie play. Next play, the Dolphins go for it on 4th and 3. Tua kind of chucks it up. There's a bad face mask against Cedric Wilson. It's a no call.
Egregious miscall.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. We never got Terry's explanation for it.
No?
They never, because so much stuff happened after that. They go to commercial, come back, Jalen Hurts. There's a batted pass on an unblocked rusher, tipped up. Jerome Baker catches it, runs it in for a pick 6. Ball don't lie. Dolphins get the touchdown anyway.
Look, guys, sometimes you're just not paying attention. You miss the obvious face mask at the direct point where the ball is arriving.
Terry sometimes leans in favor of the official, so I was waiting for.
I think it was him yesterday that had the first couple of times he came on, he was disagreeing with the call.
No, I know he will sometimes.
Yeah.
We never really got an explanation, but I think it was obviously a missed call. But so that looked like it was a big momentum switch.
Yeah, there were some pretty bad misses in this game, official-wise. Like, this was not It was not I don't think it was a well officiated game, and it was one of those games where all of the misses go in one direction, which is not going to help the
I believe
game is rigged narrative.
I believe I saw that the Eagles did not have a penalty called against them.
They kept saying that, and yet they did, because there was an offsetting penalty where they called them offside on the tush push thing, right? Didn't they make them
true.
redo that? So
in like the official penalties, they didn't.
it only
have.
goes down as like
We
they have
thought
the
that.
accepted, the declined, and then offsetting. So somebody is only looking at the accepted penalty column and not the offsetting one, which is also a penalty.
Yeah. So I think, Tyreek Hill was awesome in this game, but he had 2 drops, one of them for a touchdown. He gets open at a ridiculous level. He's incredible. They were trying to feed him on some of the short stuff too and the intermediate routes, but the 2 drops ended up
They were costly.
extremely costly. I thought Tua actually played a really good game.
The touchdown bomb to Tyreek Hill was beautiful. Perfect pass.
Yes.
And also that play, like as much as, okay, Tyreek Hill made some mistakes and they were costly mistakes. On the other hand, he invalidated a bracket coverage by just running through the middle of it.
That was Antonio Brown used to do that. There was almost an identical play where I think Big Ben hit Antonio Brown during Antonio Brown's prime, where that was it. It's like, all right, we got this. The chalkboard says safety, corner, little in-out bracket. We got this. This is easy. We're going to make Tua go somewhere else. And Tyreek Hill just splits the difference. Antonio Brown did the same thing on this. Just split the difference. Boom, put it right on him. Touchdown. It's like, man, you just created a touchdown where the chalkboard said there's no way.
Well, this is the problem, is he's so fast. Like, you can't bracket him in-out because he can just run through both of them.
Yeah.
Like, neither guy can run with him. So if you're going to block him, or if you're going to bracket him in and out, if he just runs straight past both of you, now all you've done is put 2 people in no position.
Just make it high-low.
You need to take him away high-low, and even then, if they just run anything horizontally, it's a challenging throw, but the space is still there because he's running away from both those guys. You almost need, if you want to take him away, you need like 4 points. You need to box him in with 4 different defenders because he's too freaking fast.
Yeah, I mean, so it wasn't this complete domination, I don't think, by the Eagles defense or anything. I thought the Dolphins, they got hot just before the half. Tua made some incredible throws. I mean, even the broadcast highlighting his anticipation and throw into space, I thought Tua did a really nice job there. Some of the other key plays, I want to talk about Nick Sirianni and what his decisions offensively, but Tua's interception, though, ends up being a huge difference in the game. There were multiple plays on this play where the Dolphins' spacing was completely off.
Yeah.
And 2 receivers were running to the same spot.
Two
one
in
of them,
particular.
Tua threw it up, and it was caught.
Right.
This one, he kind of invites some pressure, throws it up. It gets picked off by Darius Slay. So it was basically like a wheel route to Raheem Mostert, covered by Zach Cunningham. There also may have been a little tackle there by Zach Cunningham on that play. But it's underthrown egregiously. Darius Slay was covering his receiver in the area, comes off the play, off his man to pick it off. There was some spacing issues with Miami, but also just a bad decision and bad throw by Tua.
Yeah, I haven't seen the 2 plays side by side again, but they looked like almost the same play where the first time he completed it, Chris was talking about it on the broadcast, like this play doesn't make any sense. You're not supposed to run 2 receivers to basically the same place like that, and yet Tua kind of made it work anyway by just putting the ball where only his guy could get it. Now, the reason you're not supposed to have 2 receivers in broadly the same area is because of what happened on the second play, which is sometimes the second guy is going to bring a defender into the equation that you're not accounting for because you're targeting a different receiver, right? And if he's close enough, he can just make a play on the ball. Now, the first play, nobody saw it coming early enough to do that. But the second play, Darius Slay sees it and makes that play. And it's like, I don't understand. Okay, one time, sometimes a weird thing happens. A guy like Mostert looked like he was dealing with, aggressive press coverage or whatever, and you end up running to to a place you're not supposed to be because you've been driven there or whatever. But for it to happen twice in the same game is really strange. We need to find an explanation for that. Like, what the hell was happening on those plays?
Yeah, Mostert was running out of the slot. It wasn't like a true wheel route from the backfield. But a lot of times, I don't know what's happening here. It looks like a switch release, and whoever's running, who's the outside receiver? Is that Waddle?
Yeah, I think so.
He runs more of a fade when he's probably supposed to run a post. So a lot of times what happens here is you have an option route, right? So it's a single high coverage. And if you have an option, a lot of times you have like a post corner type of option, and it's dependent on the safety. And you don't run it into the safety, you run it away from him. Or if the middle of the field's open, you run the post, right? So Waddle runs more of like a fade, which is right where Mostert's running his wheel.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's where, Darius Slay's got his eyes on the quarterback, peels off, catches the underthrows. Man, great ball skills by Slay to be able to catch that too. Those are that's one of those, like if he dropped it, probably you see guys drop those types of plays because he was able to get off his drop and get to the ball pretty quickly. Really nice job securing it. Jordan Davis had a little pressure on the play as well. So yeah, that was a huge play in the game. 24-17, early Q4. It was 3rd and 8. Dolphins, I don't know if they were going to go for it or not on that play, but yeah, down 7, big interception there for the Eagles defense. On the other side, Nick Sirianni's decisions to go for it were a big part of the game here. They had 4th and 3 early on, probably a 40-something yard field goal opportunity. They go for it on 4th and 3. This wasn't 4th and inches. This wasn't brotherly shove, tush, push, double cheek push time. This was 4th and 3. Jalen Hurts breaks away from a sack, makes a great play to A.J. Brown to convert, and then that leads to a touchdown. So Nick Sirianni's reckless decision-making. Reckless if it doesn't work. His decision-making works, leads to a touchdown, and then late in the game, Eagles running the clock. They're up a score, up 7. There's a 3rd and whatever. A.J. Brown short of the sticks. It's 4th and 1. It's not inches. It's 4th and 1 plus. And they go for it in their own territory. The same stuff that people fire Brandon Staley for every single week. Nick Sirianni. But now the answer would be, well, Nick Sirianni has answers. Like, what's the difference? Well, Sirianni knows he has pretty much a cheat code on 4th and short. He knows he has a play that's going to work 90% of the time. So when you're looking at those conversion rates, like when you run the models, 4th and 1, I forget what the actual conversion rate is. It's probably 65, 70% though. And the Eagles are running this saying ours is 90, right? Ours is different. So maybe Sirianni won't get as much credit because he's got this, but that aggressiveness twice on that drive.
Which, just for the record, by the way, is something analytics can can take into account.
You don't know how good our play is. Well, actually, we do. Right?
How far do you think the range of that thing is now? Because it's not like, quarterback sneaks. It's like, for 4th and a half yard, we're good. If it's a full yard, it's a bit risky.
You would run your confidence levels. I bet it's like inches, it's 95, 98%.
They're getting
4th
close.
and 1, it's 90%. 4th and 1.5, it's 80, and then 4th and 2, it might be 70.
That's what I'm saying. This is getting pretty close to being like a legitimate 4th and 2 play. They're getting that much drive on this thing, and you watch their execution of this. It's incredible. Like, every aspect of this play is working in a way that isn't. So it's not, everyone's sort of going, my take on it is it's Jalen Hurts in a 600-pound squat. Okay, well, that's not a factor when Dallas Goedert is literally picking him up by the ass cheeks and driving him over the offensive line. The squat is not impacting that play. I'm here to tell you.
I think it's all of it. I really think
that's the thing.
The Eagles' O-line does make this thing work.
The Eagles' offensive line does, and not just the way you think, right? It's not just the initial surge down. It's the execution of that. It's a second push they're getting. They're now folding the tackles in and behind and like driving the initial shove, right? So like the touchdown play, Lane Johnson is now like folding back in and driving behind the interior of the offensive line, in addition to Goddard and whoever the other guy is driving Jalen Hurts from behind. It's all of it put together. Nobody else is doing that. Somebody else might have a really strong quarterback. Somebody else might have a really good interior offensive line. Somebody else might be executing the shove part correctly from behind. Nobody's doing all of it at the same time, in addition to those edge blockers sort of folding back in and driving the whole thing from behind. It is unstoppable right now from an Eagles point of view. And I honestly think, like I said, we're reaching the point where it's like a 4th and 2 play. And I can only imagine they're going to run that at some point.
It does break the arithmetic on the arithmetic.
I'm kind of sad they didn't. When they got down to like the 5-yard line late in the game, I kind of wanted to see them just run it 4 times.
Just keep going.
Yeah. We're at the 5. There's a couple minutes left. We're going to punch it in with this play that you all hate.
Well, remember, you talked about like Brady earlier in the show about his QB sneaks. Early in his career, because Brady played in the dark, many years ago.
1980s.
Yes.
Yeah.
They used to run empty under center in the NFL. You never see that anymore, right? Empty under center.
Somebody did it last week.
Did they?
I think so, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Need split backs. Oh, maybe, was it Josh Norris called it out? He said?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I was like, yeah, bring back split backs. But like, there were times where Brady, if he had like double 3 techniques, he had nobody, no nose tackle, he would just like run forward for 5.
Yeah.
Like that was a new thing in the NFL that had never been done before, because it's like, this seems logical. Let's just take the free 5 yards. But that was all part of like the QB sneak package, that it's a thing. I mean, the Eagles, do you need to have that type of formation and stance? Like, can they start breaking this out as more of a surprise? It's like 2nd and 3. It's like, why don't we just move, run forward for 5 because we can do it. It'll be interesting to see how they evolve this. It'll also be interesting to see if they ever try to run a counter off of that. Do you set up?
They did last year, they've done.
Or just how often they're able, or what they can come up with.
Now, they haven't shown one of those this year, I think. But last year they did. They ran some like weird wide stuff off this just to show teams, hey, you can't completely just stack everybody up in the A gap because we do have a wide threat off the back of this.
The Jags have done a pretty good job of that, where they get into that tight formation and then they flip it to ETN, and if you have a speed back,
I don't think the Eagles have shown any kind of wide variant off it this year, in part because it's just been completely unstoppable. I honestly think, though, I think that would get it banned, though, by the way. Like, if they just lined up and went, we have 6 yards to go, and we're going to pick up all 6 of them by 4 consecutive tush-push, brotherly shove, 2 double-cheek push things, and just because you can't stop it. We're going to grind you down. I think that would make the competition committee ban it.
I promised myself we wouldn't talk about this for 20 minutes. But
I'm fascinated by how good they are at it, and B, I think it's reaching this point now where they are so confident in how unstoppable it is that it's like a control thing. It's like, we know you can't stop this. We are going to go out every 4th down. We are going to impose our will and crush you, and you have no shot.
I'm impressed. This was one of the best all-around games by the Eagles this season. I am also fascinated by the short memories. Again, I'm overreacting to the people, but there was a whole lot of instant reaction, which is like, Eagles back to the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Huh? We're like, it's rematch time. It's like literally 7 days ago, the Eagles blew a game to the Jets. And I know the Niners had a bad week, but in the rain, in Cleveland, but they still exist, right? This was the best, most complete game, though, of the Eagles. And they took it to a really impressive Dolphins offense.
Yeah, and
because the Dolphins can't play in the Mid-Atlantic or Northeast states outdoors.
You can't have both sides of this, right? You're either saying they didn't do that great a job against the Dolphins offense because they left some plays on the table, or you're saying the mid-temperatures of Philadelphia stifle this Miami offense.
The temperatures affect the entire pass game. The weather factor affects the entire pass game. In a dome or in a controlled environment or good weather, it's better. Not that this was bad weather, but they said there might be swirling winds. And it affects the ability not just to throw the ball, but to catch it. It's all a factor.
I mean, I think they did a really good job on the Miami offense.
Yeah, of course they did.
Yeah.
I also said it easily could have been, 17 they given up, but that's still a win, right? Given what the Dolphins were.
I mean, Miami left some plays on the table, but we were talking about how they were averaging 8 yards per play heading into this game. They averaged 4.9 in this game. And even if you give them credit for the plays that they left on the table, right? Tyreek Hill catches that pass and scores. They're still not getting anywhere near 8. I mean, Philadelphia took at least 2 yards per play off this offense relative to anybody else, which raises the question, were Miami simply fraudulent all the time and a product of a terrible schedule?
Oh, you went there, huh?
I'm just asking the question.
So they just beat up on some bad teams.
Now you have to answer it, and you're the one that gets in trouble. I'm simply asking questions here.
Maybe. This is why I think Tua played a better game, because in other games, you've got a little shovel pass, and you get some easier stuff. You get some more. The passes weren't as open. The windows were tighter.
Right.
And Tua made the throws.
Very little in terms of like the trickery worked.
But again, was it the Patriot? Where did the Dolphins offense struggle the most? In New England, in Buffalo, in Philadelphia. It's not just outdoors but those are pretty decent defenses.
Yeah.
Right. So that is a fair question. I mean, you knew that the Dolphins they're not going to average 8. They're not going to average 8 yards per play the entire season. We know that's the case.
Bold claim.
But we've seen this in the past with, say, even a Greatest Show on Turf. I know they won a Super Bowl, but they ran into some good defenses and got shut down. Or like an 07 Patriots or a 2013 Broncos. The best statistical offenses don't always win it because sometimes the best stats come because you pile on against some bad teams. But in a one-game setting, can an Eagles defense take it to the Dolphins? Absolutely, and they did last night.
How good is Jalen Carter?
Oh, yeah, really good.
Like
we've thrown you threw a Kevin Williams in his prime comp.
He really does.
Last night,
he looks like Kevin Williams, like peak Kevin Williams. And Souza.
Does anybody remember Kevin Williams?
No, Souza, but one of the most, by the way, like bizarrely forgotten dominant players ever. Like that dude was Hall of Fame caliber defensive lineman. And everyone's like, who's Kevin Williams now? But Souza, I think, was asking on Twitter, does that make Jordan Davis Pat Williams? Have the Eagles recreated the Williams wall with Georgia defensive tackles,
Absolutely.
And you have Jordan Davis inside as this like two-gap monster, while Jalen Carter over there, Kevin Williams, just ragdolling guards one-on-one and getting into the backfield immediately. There's a lot of similarities.
Yes, absolutely. Jalen Carter still unblockable as a pass rusher, and I want to shout out Hassan Reddick, who only played 7 snaps against the run, but he played it at a 2015 Khalil Mack level, those 7 snaps against the run. So good job by Reddick. Not normally a great run defender, but he was blowing plays up early on yesterday. That was another little factor. I know Mostert ended up breaking a run or two, but early on the Dolphins had no rhythm because the Eagles did take away that running attack. It hasn't just been Tua in the passing attack, right? It's been they're averaging like 6 yards a pop in a whole bunch of games in the run game as well.
That's the thing. The sort of trick plays that they dialed up, or not even the trick, just the sort of crazy misdirection stuff that was springing guys wide the hell open with all. None of that was there yesterday. Like the Eagles stopped that and sort of made Miami have their success in a much more conventional manner, and they had some success, but like that took a big part of that offense away.
All right, man, it's time to wrap it up. We play to the number of games. Next week we'll have a full slate. We'll still end at 9:32. Just what we'll do every single week. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We still have Monday Night Football, little Vikings and 49ers action tonight. You'll be back here tomorrow, breaking it all down with Trevor. Talking about Caleb Williams falling draft stock, perhaps.
Is he tanking to avoid the tanking teams?
I don't know, man.
Oh, you think you're tanking for me? I'm going to tank for somebody else.
Yeah, maybe that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to go number 10 overall, like Pat. Be like him. But yeah, you guys will be back here tomorrow, breaking it all down. We appreciate everybody waking up early with us here on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow with more PFF NFL Podcast.